Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was betrayed and left to die in the Forest of Death Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. I coughed, choking on my own life substance. I tried to breathe but nothing could enter my lungs, as they were already full of blood. I was scared, not of what was to come, but what I was not able to leave behind. I tried to move my body, but I could barely manage a silent tear. My murderous sadistic face came into view. Fuck you, I croaked, thinking back. It's quite funny how I described my voice as croaking. Because that is exactly what I did. I croaked. I died. A fucking bullet wound to the chest. That's what did me in. My laugh echoed in my head. And thus my eyes closed and I nervously gave in to death. After all, I was sure I was going to end up in the deepest and darkest part of hell. But then again, when is life ever simple? Because moments later, I found myself in Death's office. What is your biggest fear? I got up and spat on her desk. Fuck you. I walked towards the office door. The lady sat straight, dressed in her white blouse and black pencil skirt, with a clipboard in her hands. Her wooden desk was neat, with only a few pens on the desk and a cup of a black liquid which somehow smelled like coffee. Shelby, calm down and I'll explain myself, she sighed. I lifted up my middle finger and tried the door. It didn't open. I kicked at it as my famous temper getting the best of me. No! I'm fucking dead. Why don't you just send me to hell? I growled. I already know I'm going there. I had been a child that grew up in a wrong environment. I had tried, honestly I did, to be a good person. I mean, I was educated in elementary, all 5 years of high school, 2 years of college, and 4 years in ancient Mediterranean studies receiving my bachelor's. I donated extra money to charity, opened doors for strangers, gave blood when I could, helped old ladies cross the road. I did nice things. But my undoing had been my temper. I needed an outlet. But that outlet wasn't very legit. I was naturally a stressed person, always looking over my shoulder, and paranoid. That caused me to get into fights. Just like the one that got me killed, because there is no such thing. I stopped and looked at her stupidly. There is no burning pits, there is no jailing, no chains, no pain. She rolled her eyes before pointing at the chair again. Sit down, I'm here to evaluate you. I snorted in disbelief. That's funny. I'm sure I'll just fail whatever bullshit you pull on me, just like everything else. My attention wavered back to the door, and I rattled it as if it would all of a sudden become unlocked. It says here that you fear dying unnoticed the most, she read. I saw red and turned back to her. Fuck off, I roared. No, I'm sorry, you fear not being acknowledged in all sense of the word, she hummed. She twisted her red pen around her thumb. I had always been jealous of how people could do that. Fuck you, don't you know any other insults? I growled at her from behind the chair, my nails making marks in the wood. She placed the clipboard on the desk and stared at me. To successfully pass on, one has to achieve their dream or to accept that it will never happen and be okay with that, she told me, trailing off. I looked at her puzzled. What are you talking about? I told her. I like you, she told me. I was quite surprised. I really like you, so I'm going to give you another shot. What? I asked. I was very confused. Sorry. I don't think I swing that way. I'm giving you another life. Her stamper came out of nowhere, and she positioned it above my paper. Wait. What do you mean another life? I said. She looked up and smirked. You are a survivor, so I don't want to see you back here for at least another 25 years. The stamp fell and I plunged back into darkness without any warning, with only her voice trailing after me. It is the least I can do for you. And so I stayed in that darkness for what felt like eternity. I was confused for most of it. But soon enough I actually started to use that time wisely. I did some thinking, and quickly came to the conclusion that there was no getting out of this. I had to accept it, and deal with it as it came. And so the first thing I did was face my old life. I was born as the second of 2 children. I was also the only female. Yes, I'm a girl. Our mother have no motherly virtue. She would watch as my older brother picked on me. It was at the point where she laughed at me the first time my brother made me trip down the stairs. I had broken my arm as well as his. She laughed after my brother called me a bitch. She was no real mother. He was her favorite, so she never punished him. I hated him too. Now my father. That was one of the people I had adored in my life. He worked his ass off to support us. He was a mechanic at the airport. He worked midnights, starting at 7 p.m. and ending at 5 a.m. That was his regular shift. Most of the time he would work overtime, finally getting home around 10 a.m., sometimes even 1 p.m. With that he would go to bed and start over again the next day. Now imagine trying to raise 2 kids at the same time. My father was my inspiration. Working so hard, but never being acknowledged for his work. Never asking for recognition either. Through that he still found time to spend time with us. I could never forgive my mother for treating me nor the way she treated my father. She never had a job, and when my father passed away, she started to live with my brother. My brother was a drug addict from an early age. When exactly? I didn't care enough to realize, and relied on his income of selling and buying drugs to support him and later my mother. He was actually a bright guy. Smart, but made the wrong decisions. I don't mean that everyone who smoked or that does drugs is an awful person. I mean who hasn't smoked a joint. But when you start abusing it and taking it to be able to function, that's when it becomes a problem. My brother couldn't eat so he smoked, wasn't awake until he did his first line of coke, wasn't alive until he injected his first shot of heroin. He needed it to function, as did my mother. My heart tells me that they were failures. They weren't living, they were waiting for death. In my books that meant they were the lowest of the low, but I couldn't help but laugh at that, because I was one too, but in a different manner. Fighting was my life. I remember my father being called into my primary school because I had gotten into a fight. He looked at me and I saw the again pass through his mind. The counselor, bless her soul, told my father that maybe I had too much energy and should join a sport. She never did specify what sport, so my father took me to a MMA gym the next morning. He told me, if you want to fight, fight in a controlled environment, and learn how to do it properly. And that is where it all started. 15 years of MMA later and I'm dead. I tried my heart out. I knew my goal was to get into the UFC. To be like Ronda Rousey, Joanne Calderwood, Amanda Nunes, and most of all Joanna Jedrzejczyk. Because that is where people would watch me. It is where I would finally be respected. I fought my first fight when I was 15. My second, 2 months later. I was a fighter. No matter how hard I was beaten down, I'd come back for one last hit, then another, and my father was my main supporter. No matter what time or when my match would take place, he was always there. He would take off work to come watch. He would work 16 hours the next day to be able to see me fight. But he would go with a smile, and he would brag about me to his coworkers. My mother and brother were too high at home. Not like they gave a shit. After 8 years, my mother finally asked why I had a black eye. She told me that I should be a real lady, to stop fighting and get a husband. I had just turned 18. One of my happiest memories is when I performed my first knockout at 16 years old. My father went crazy, jumping up and down, screaming. I remember looking towards him as the ref held up my hand as he jumped a random person, hugging them and pointing to me. I was so happy when I read "That's my daughter" on his lips, but all good things come to an end. He died when I was 16. He overworked himself. I had to find a way to pay my schooling and his burial on my own. Once again, the other two didn't give a shit. That's why I hate addictions. You are so dependent on it after you start that you can't live without it. They were dependent on the weed, the heroin, the purple drank, the meth. But I was addicted to fighting and training. It took over my life. I submerged myself in my training and school. To compensate, I didn't sleep. This way I didn't have the nightmares. I started to smoke cigarettes once father died. I lost my support, my common sense. So when that man came into my life and offered me fame and money, I didn't refuse, and thus I started to fight underground. 7 years later I was a veteran. I beat people an inch from death, sometimes to death. I killed dogs with my bare hands. I then took the dirty money and I paid for my father's funeral, my apartment, and my education with it. But was it really that bad? I had to survive, it's all I knew. I continued my professional fighting on the side and the two never intertwined. My coach probably guessed if the large bruises and teeth marks were an indication, but he didn't say anything. Probably because I saw the same scars on him. I laughed all alone in the darkness. I held my head and let a tear fall down my face. I will be forgetting this anyway, so why was I thinking of this? It's because I don't want my next self to be like I was. Whatever karma would transfer over, I wanted there to be at least some good. And so I did the hardest thing possible. I tried to forgive them. I forgave my mother and my brother for being idiots. I forgave my murderer for killing me. I forgave my best friend for abandoning me. I forgave my coach for not stopping me. I forgave that man for recruiting me. I forgave his fucked up son too. I forgave the dogs. No, wait, I didn't, because they were like me, trying to survive. It was the trainers and the owners of the dogs that I forgave. I forgave my father for dying on me, and last but not least, the hardest thing I did was that I forgave myself. I forgave myself for being a failure. Because this time that will be born, won't be this one. It was my second chance, but forgiving everything didn't help much. I would forget it in time anyway. The moment I was born or the time when my earlier years would be wiped from my mind, nothing would cross over. Just kidding, karma's a bitch. The first few months following my birth were uneventful to say the least. I really don't remember much as my senses were all over the place. This meant that I was not able to distinguish what was going on around me. Despite this, I knew the exact moment that I was born. With my senses funny, I was barely able to comprehend what was happening. I went from warm to cold to warm again. I was then transferred into the waiting arms of my now mother. I could feel the heat and the slight tremble in her limbs as she clutched me tightly to her chest. Drops of what I realized were water fell onto me, and although my hearing sucked, I could remember the faint words that were whispered to me. "Kami-sama." She cried. "Thank you." Half a year later, I would start to realize that I could feel something like blood rushing through my veins. It was slightly uncomfortable, but not painful. It was strange, it made me feel somewhat powerful. And whatever it was, there was a lot of it. As I focused on it, the feeling would intensify. The first time I did that, I freaked out. I was crying because I was a fucking baby and couldn't do anything else. A year later, I would come to recognize this substance as chakra and would place myself in this fucked up world. The other thing I didn't know was that my memory was still intact. It was quite weird. I would have thought would have started with a blank slate like John Locke's theory. But for some reason I could remember everything. I even remembered the damn cat that liked to meow and piss at my door every night. Asshole. I kind of missed him. This world was somewhat strange to me, despite my previous knowledge. It was all new and wasn't what I was used to. I was wary. In other words, this led to the day when I started to recognize things. I'll tell you the truth, I was terrified. At 7 months, I was finally able to recognize oddities in the world around me. For one thing, neither of my parents had any pupils. I reached out to touch one of my now father's white eyes. He peeked out from the other, a small smile gracing his lips as he watched me. He had straight brown hair and a silver insignia on his forehead. To my surprise, on it was the shape of a leaf. To be honest, I was surprised it took me that long to realize it. By a while I mean a few days from the first time I was able to see clearly what the insignia the headband was, to grasp what it meant. When I did figure it out, I screamed, flailing my little arms. I was scared, confused, and was wondering who had a grudge against me. Fucking office lady. The world that I now lived in was something I was already familiar with. Very familiar. I had spent years and years sitting on my bed, in my underwear and sports bra, eating ice cream and sometimes nursing a concussion or healing from other injuries. Or at least trying to watch this show. At first it was something to pass the time, then eventually it became more than that. I had followed the plot line religiously, seeing the episode as soon as it came out, buying the series as soon as it was on DVD. I connected with the characters and used it to escape my painful life. It is quite ironic that I actually got the chance to live it now. Shireka-chan, my now mother, took me in her arms and cradled me. My now father looked over her shoulder, clearly worried. Did I do something? He asked her. My mother rolled her eyes before attempting to feed me. I'll skip that part, it was quite embarrassing. With time, came more realization of where I was born. And to what family. As you have probably figured out, I was a citizen of Kona. The leaf sign on my father's insignia was a testimony to that. This came at a shock for me. Before being reborn, if anyone would have asked me which village I would picture myself being born in, I would have said either Aim or Kiri. Out of all the villages, those were the ones which I believed to be the most fucked up, hence the bloodline wars and Hanzo's tyranny. What a fitting scene for someone as messed up as me. As for the family? I'm sure you have already realized it. Both of my parents had white eyes and straight brown hair. This meant that they were part of the Hyuga clan. And in extension, this applied to me as well. I was set down on the floor and sat up in front of a closet door. I touched my reflection in the large mirror. I had the same pupilless light purple white eyes as my whole clan with the brown hair of my mother. And I didn't know how I felt about that. The Hyuga were a very traditional clan, but as you probably guessed, I wasn't. I would later find out that I was part of the branch family, as both of my parents had the caged bird seal. This meant that once I came of age I would be getting it as well. Anxiety bloomed in my chest, and I furrowed my brows. I was going to be trapped. A bird in a cage once again, to be a shield to others and entertainment for everyone else. A spit of laughter came from behind me. The sudden noise surprised me and I fell over onto my back. I whined and flailed my arms trying to pick myself back up. Stupid motor skills. This caused the suspects to laugh harder. I looked over and my now mother came towards me. She raised me in her arms and I looked back at my reflection. The lower part of the mirror was fogged up. I shrugged. I guess I was too close to the mirror if my breath fogged it up. And thus I took advantage of being a child and cuddled close to my now mother. I didn't have this type of affection in my past life. So I soaked it up now while I could, because after all this will be gone. My karma had followed me. By the time I was 2, I was running around and communicating almost perfectly with my now parents. Although my grammar needed some work, I was clearly understood. Learning a new language in 2 years was a feat, and my parents were quite proud of my advancement. With new language skills also came the dreaded moment where I was introduced to other kids. Like I had suspected, I really just didn't get along with them. And I believe that is quite normal. I mean, I was an adult in a child's body. I really did not want to play with blocks or build sand castles, and so this led to my first fight was a disaster. The other kid was a Hyuga 3 years my senior. I lost terribly. With my new body came new reflexes and all my muscle memory was wiped clean. I had none of my skills from my previous life. So what happened? I didn't want to play with the other kids, and so I sat on the porch looking at the clouds. I ignored the 5-year-old that decided that I absolutely had to play with him. I then called him an idiot, causing him to use his gentle fist. Unfortunately, I landed in the nearby pond. Fortunately, there was an adult around. Let's just say, I was wet, frustrated, and in trouble. I had been under the assumption that there was only one direct line in the main family. Turns out I was wrong. Those who are closest to the main family had some special privileges as well. And this kid was a part of that group. My now father sat me on the table while my mother checked over my chakra points. Thinking about it now, it's a good thing that I still felt foreign in my body. Still like I did not belong. Because then I would have had to answer how a 2-year-old had the muscle memory of a distinct style. And I really didn't want to take a trip to Tianai. I couldn't afford it. I'm very disappointed with you, Reika. My now father scolded. I pouted before my now mother pushed a point in my body where my chakra was disrupted. The natural flow of the energy ran through my arm once again, and I allowed myself to relax. I flexed my hand, ignoring what was said in favor of studying my arm and the chakra flow. Reika-chan, listen to your father, my now mother said. I looked to the side and nodded. It is not nice to call people names, he said, but I did not want to play with him. I told him. My parents' expression suddenly turned sad. Reika. My now father took a deep breath. Next time you have to say yes and play. Even if you don't want to. But I don't want to, I said, my voice raising in volume a bit more. My now mother pulled me close to her, enveloping me in a hug. It wasn't fair, Reika-chan. She caught my attention when her voice wobbled. It kind of scared me. Listen to your father. Please. My brows furrowed together, and a sudden tear rolled down my cheek. It surprised even me. I don't cry. Stupid childish emotions. But why? I said, Reika. My attention was brought back to my now father as he brushed the tear from my cheek. My little genius, he sighed before kissing my forehead. His hesitation soon turned solid and he spoke with confidence. There are 2 parts of our family. The main and the branch. The branch? I asked. My now mother pulled away from me and I gave them my full attention. Yes, like a tree, Reika. There is the trunk, which would be the main family, and there is the branches which, like the name suggests, it is the branch family. She said, which are we? I asked innocently, as if I didn't know. We are part of the branch family, my father replied. He placed his hand on my small head and ruffled my hair. Because we are part of the branch family, we have a very important duty to fulfill. That was a word I didn't understand. Fulfill? I asked. He nodded. Bring about, to do. It is our job. I gripped my pants unconsciously. What do we have to do? My now mother turned sharply away from my, trying to hide the tear that escaped her eye. I realized then how young she really was. Doing the calculations years later, she must have been 20. I was born when she was 18. We have to protect the trunk of the tree. We are tasked with the duty to protect the main branch so that the secrets of our Kekii Genkei does not fall into unwanted hands. More tears fell from my eyes as his analogy struck a different chord in me. We are the branches that protect the trunk. We make the trunk strong and do the work. But most of all, if one of us dies, it will not affect the trunk. The trunk will still go on. We are expendable. Just die already, immortal. You are getting too old to play this game. I tried to shake out the voices. Bring us some young ones. Give us your blood. I do not have a choice. I looked in his eyes. A flash of sadness came and went. Be proud of this, my daughter. His hand landed on my forehead. It brushed away my hair, and he smiled softly. Like my mother, he too was young. I would later realize that he was even younger actually. We are the protectors. And so life went on. I went to more play dates, and this time I sucked up my pride and anger, all for my parents, and played with the kids. The adults continuously glared at me, and I pretended to ignore the comments they made. For the most part, this all stopped 6 months later. I was 2.5 when I was sitting at the table eating with my parents, and thinking. They were having a conversation, something about my mother's latest mission, the Byakugan. It was never something that I had previously thought about. It was a Kekii Genkai that could only be mastered by a Hyuga. The anime nor the manga ever said anything about how to activate it. I hummed before closing my eyes, unconsciously toying with my chakra. I had been so used to not having the force, that it was almost second nature to locate and use it. Reika. I opened them to see both of my parents staring at me. Yes. Ota-san? I asked, but it was my mother that answered. Since when have you been able to use your chakra like that? I furrowed my eyebrows in confusion. The veins on the side of my mother's face tensed, and her eyes became hyper-focused. I looked at this and shook. I had only seen the Byakugan once before, and I got my butt kicked for it. Your chakra system seems to be developing quite rapidly, she said. I looked down at my body, then back at her. You can see that? I asked. I crawled to her side and sat on my knees in front of her. Staring into her eyes, I tried to figure out what she was focusing on. Yes, Reika-chan, it's our Kekii Genkai, remember? I turned to look at my father and cocked my head. How can I do it? I asked. He gave me a smile. All you have to do is focus your chakra to your eyes, and it should activate. I hummed before closing my eyes. I still had some difficulty controlling my chakra, but not as much as before. After all, I had been training it in secret for the last year. Nap time was finally useful. So when I opened them, in my other life I had always wondered what the Byakugan was like. I thought it was something like X-ray vision. How wrong was I? It was so much more. I saw only in black and white, barely any color. Every detail was apparent, and my brain absorbed it all. I saw a bird outside the window open its mouth, the tongue flicking a few times before he chirped. I flooded more chakra into my eyes and my vision expanded through the walls and out around the house. This did not mean that everything slowed down. It only magnified, like looking through a telescope in high definition. Wow! I whispered as I studied the small anthill right off our doorstep. I counted each of the 289 grains of sand on the top of the little hill. The Byakugan was amazing. It was crazy, it really is awesome. My mother laughed. My vision retracted into the room and I looked over at my parents. I saw the skin wrinkle slightly around my father's eyes before he laughed. I forgot how amazing it was the first time I saw through the Byakugan. He told my mother. She hummed, starting at me. I studied their bodies before my eyes focused on color. Blue circulated throughout their bodies, going to each part, before dividing to follow the chakra paths. What are the white points? I asked my parents. They looked at each other before pointing to one of the white dots on my own hand. I looked down, following my mother's finger. These are called tenjetsu. My mother responded. Tenjetsu? I asked. I didn't remember much about them from the show. Yes, my father answered. They are points in the body that help direct the flow of chakra and to help with regulating the amount that goes past it. I hummed before studying them. They were small even to the Byakugan. How do you turn it off? I asked. Retract your chakra. My father replied. I did so and everything blasted with color. The sudden assault hurt my head and a sudden headache formed. Can you train me to use it? I asked them. They smiled before my father came closer to gather me in his arms. Happiness and content filled me, and I couldn't help but smile. Of course, Reika. He hugged me close, patting my head. We would be awful parents if we didn't teach you about your birthright. I looked over at my mother to see her look down softly. If I had to describe the look, I guess it would have been guilt. My mother looked guilty, and I had no idea why. And so, training pretty much replaced playing with the clan kids. Thank you, fucking office lady. I moved my body slowly as I moved from standing with both hands out to my right arm back and slide my feet further apart. I then moved it downwards, in a semicircle, before reaching out with the palm of my hand. My left palm followed before my right foot met air. Reika. I stopped my kata before looking over at my father. Yes, Ota-san? I asked, my concentration solely on the task at hand. I kept my foot in the air, arching my back, before taking hold of it in my hands. I felt the stretch and was content to stay in the position, wobbling only to some extent. I know you know the kata by heart, he said. Speed up your movements. I scowled, looking at him. But my technique, I remarked. You do not have any major flaws in your technique, Reika. My father smiled, pride showing in his eyes. And you practice every morning before your mother is up anyway. I looked at him sheepishly. Nothing can be hidden from the Byakugan, my daughter. I put my foot down before sighing. Yes, Ota-san, I said before moving into position. This time I worked twice as fast. The speed definitely sapped away from my coordination. I ended the sequence with the thrust of my left palm and scowled. My form was messy, my kicks were not nearly as high or powerful as when I took my time. This body needs to be trained more. Clapping was heard from the porch and I turned around. My mother grinned happily at me. Good job, Reika-chan, she said, causing me to blush in embarrassment. My father laughed at the red that painted my face, before going towards my mother. I don't know what I did to deserve them, but I love these people, and they were so good to me. My father kissed her cheek and she looked at him lovingly. I loved the sight. I never had that in my old life. I don't think I can remember the last time that I remember my old parents having any sort of intimate contact. My old parents didn't love each other after I was born. They had even slept in different beds and rooms, but I got a good family in this life. I was lucky. These people were not shy in showing affection to each other within the household. They truly loved each other. I actually found it quite surprising considering the Hyuga were definitely a traditional clan, and outward affection would probably considered inappropriate. But it was hard, I must say, to trust them. To give them the chance to be my parents. To allow them to love me. But the hardest, I must say, was for my now mother. This mother will not be like my past mother. If there is anything I know, it is that there is no two people the same. So it doesn't mean, just because she has the same title in this life, that she will act the same. The same thing goes for my father. So that is why I try. I try to be their daughter. When do you have to be at the gates? My mother asked my father. He looked up at the sun before doing the calculations in his head. In 30 minutes, he sighed before giving her a peck on the lips. You will be leaving on a mission? I asked, walking over to the couple. I stood beside them and looked up at his face. It was strangely glowing a bit more than usual. Yes, I have a A rank with a couple of other jonin, he said. A well-hidden hint of excitement tainted his voice. I'll be gone for the week. Who's leading? My mother asked, catching on to his eagerness. She smiled at him, quite amused. My father's lips twitched. Tsukumo. I froze, looking at my parents in shock. I knew that name. Tsukumo. White hair and black eyes came to mind, a knife full of blood, and a depressed teenager. Tsukumo-kun? My mother asked. She smiled. We have not seen him in years. I'm sure you will be able to catch up fast. I cocked my head to the side before tugging on my father's pants. Yes, Reika? He asked. Who's Sakumo-san? I asked. My father smiled before picking me up and hugging me close. Sakumo was one of my genin teammates, he said. Although he was already a chunin when I was assigned to the team. Interesting. Why have I not met him? I asked curiously. My father laughed before kissing my forehead. You will, Reika. You will. And so that day came sooner than I thought. Reika, put everything away, we are going to the park. My head snapped away from the book that laid under me. The park? I groaned. My father smiled down at me and nodded to the door. Yes, you need to be social, he told me. You've been focusing on the book for much too long. I looked up at the clock and read 2 in the afternoon. I had been reading since the early morning. To be honest, I was trying my hardest to start learning to read the language. But as a 3-year-old, that was harder than expected. Some characters I could recognize, such as person or tree. I personally liked the symbols for tree, some trees and forest. It was quite repetitive. But for the most part, I was looking at the photos trying to associate the words with the picture, guessing what it was about. In doing this, I was able to figure some out that way. My parents were quite surprised when I ran to them, asking if it really was the symbol for fire. They thought I was just looking at the symbols. Little did they know I was on my way to learning the language. I squeaked when my father picked me up, and over his shoulder. Within moments we were out the door. I quietly pouted in his arms, not wanting to go. I didn't want to have to go watch and play with the other Hyuga kids. They were mean and stuck up and I was seriously going to get in trouble again. As I was lost in thought, I didn't realize that the compound was getting further away. I furrowed my eyebrows in confusion. Ota-san, where are we going? I asked. The park, he said. But it's that way. I pointed in the opposite way. He chuckled. So you want to go play with the other clan kids that bad? He asked. I glared and he smiled at my expression and lack of response. We are going to a different park today. I scrunched up my face. More kids, more screaming but from different families. At least the adults wouldn't glare at me. Why? Because you will need to know the kids that are going to be in your class starting next year, he said. They will end up on your genin team and thus you will have to get along. But they are so immature, I whined. He shook his head as we turned the corner. No, Reika, you are just too mature. I shrugging, not denying it. I wasn't going to correct him. All Hyuga children are somewhat more mature than regular kids. It comes with our environment. We had to be all business. The child was taken out of us at a young age. But that was fine. The less time I have to be a child, the more time I can spend training, and eventually, messing with the timeline. The idea of being a genius will benefit me. I lived in the era of the third Hokage, when Sakumo was still alive. The second ninja war was coming to its end, and the third will come soon after. And I still didn't know in which way will I take part in it. But those thoughts are for a different day. We turned into an open area and I was faced with a playground. Slides, monkey bars, spider webs, and swings. Oh, how I've missed swings. As a child I used to swing all day, anything to get out of the house. It felt liberating, like I could fly. Heiza, I looked to the voice to see a man sitting on one of the benches. My father grinned. Sakumo looked young. He didn't have any wrinkles like he would have in the future. He was dressed in his normal blue uniform with his chunin vest over it. On his left arm a piece of white material surrounded it. Red triangles surrounded the sleeve with the Uzumaki swirl in the center. He was hunched over on his knees, lazily saluting my father, as we came over. Sakumo. Nice to see you, he said, putting me down. I was silent, unsure what to make of this man. He seemed nice as he conversed with my father. But I knew that sometime in the future, right after his son would graduate, he would kill himself. That coward, how dare he abandon his son to deal with his mess? Reika? I was startled out of my thoughts by my father calling me. Yes? I asked innocently. He nodded to Sakumo and my attention drifted back to the older Hataki. Hello, my name is Hataki. Sakumo, what is yours? He asked. He slipped off the bench and came to my level. I studied him for a few seconds before deciding that I might be able to like him. His eyes were black, bright and full of life, but the black circles said another story. He must have a hard time sleeping. After all, that's what happens when you're put in the position of survival. Especially when you are a genuinely nice person. I knew it all too well. Nice to meet you, Hataki-san. I bent at the waist, trying to play the part of the obedient Hyuga child. My name is Hyuga Reika. He studied me for a few seconds before he blurted out in laughter. Hataki-san? He wiped at his eyes before grinning. I feel like you are talking to my father, just call me Sakumo. Damn, thinking back, I think that was probably the moment where my opinion of him started to change. Yes, Sakumo-san. Very polite child you have there, Heiza. He told my father. Yes, he said, ruffling my brown hair. But only when she wants to. I glared up at him and flatted it out again. I don't think I've ever seen a disobedient Hyuga. Sakumo got up before placing his hands on his hips. Well, other than you. That was mostly because of you had me in trouble all the time. He teased. Who's this? I looked to the rude kid that suddenly appeared at Sakumo's side and immediately realized who it was. I resisted the shit-eating grin that wished to break free. Why don't you introduce yourself and find out? Sakumo lightly scolded the kid. The kid shrugged but did as his father asked. I'm Hataki, Kakashi, and you are? He asked me. He looked the same age as me, maybe a bit older. He stood upright and confident with his signature gravity-defying white hair and the same black eyes. His blue mask covered the bottom half of his face with his shuriken scarf wrapped around his neck. Hyuga Reika. Little did I know, this was the start of a wonderful, but sad relationship. And with it began my ripple. It was odd. I stood on a branch watching Kakashi struggle to get up to me and scratched my head. My chakra network developed very fast. As months flew by, we truly began to notice how large my reserves are. I was 3 and my chakra reserves were nearing the level of a low genin. I had large reserves, so what? Lots of other characters had the same. Sasuke, Uzumaki Mido, the second Hokage, Naruto, Kisame, Kushina, Nagato. But if large reserves meant poor chakra control, how could I control my chakra so well? I was 3 and had mastered the tree climbing exercise within no time. Was it because I was a genius? No, that was what the others said. But I knew it was different. Both of my parents had great chakra control, but even they didn't learn as fast as I did. I swear I'll be able to get up there within the hour. Kakashi fumed as he picked himself up off the ground. I stayed silent as I continued to think. No, it was my rebirth. That must be what caused my control. I concentrated on the living river that flowed throughout my body and hummed. I lived so long without having chakra, and now that I do, it came easy to be able to control. I jumped down from a branch and looked towards Kakashi as he launched himself back up the tree. This was no longer this invincible chi that my teacher in my old life had dragged on about. An energy that flowed throughout your body and nourished your movements. It is not a force that people could deny. This was something I could see. And with my sudden exposure to it, I was able to control the flow and distribution with relative ease. I took one step onto the tree before testing it with a tug. My foot stayed planted. I took one more step and held myself vertical. It put strain on my core and I flexed my abdominal muscles to keep me straight. This control was scary. I guess genetics somewhat helped. The Hyuga always had good control. They had to, as their techniques relied on the release of chakra from the pores and the maintenance of its shape. Very good, Reika. My concentration cut off and I smack onto the ground. Ow. I ground before I heard Kakashi laugh from the branch I had previously stood on. It took a bit longer, but he was definitely up there. Oh, zip it! I snapped at him. I could almost see the smile appear from behind his mask. Sakumo also laughed from beside me. I blushed and crossed my arms. I wasn't really upset, just embarrassed. What do you two say to Dango? The white-haired man said. My ears perked up and I looked at Kakashi. He caught my eye and I couldn't help but grin. Sounds good. Kakashi jumped down from the branch and hit the ground next to me. Then get going, Sakumo said. Kakashi went forward and grabbed his father's hand. It was a cute sight. I never had that growing up the first time. I had always been quite jealous of being able to hold my parents' hand. My mother never wanted to touch me and my father was just too busy. Reika! I shook away my thoughts and saw the hand that extended towards me. I followed it to Kakashi's face. With a small grin, I gripped his hand and he helped me up. His grip didn't let go as we started to walk away, hand in hand. Like train. My heart beat excitedly inside me. I was happy. So very happy. I felt as if I finally belonged somewhere. Like I was really alive, and that everything that had happened in my other life was a dream. But little did I know just how entrenched my other life still was. Want to come over, Reika? Kakashi asked. I looked at him in confusion before glancing at Sakumo. He smiled at me encouragingly. I would have to ask Ota-san. I answered, my eyes trailed to the man I called my father. A smile graced his face and he nodded. Go ahead, Reika. My father answered. I grinned before gripping Kakashi's hand in excitement. I was curious to know where Kakashi lived. Maybe I was even going to meet his mother. I would only find out later that she had already passed. We walked away from the park, my father talking animatedly with Sakumo. We can play ninja in the backyard when we get back, Kakashi said. I watched his scarf wave in the wind as he pulled me along. It will help with our training. We got to his house in no time. It was a small 2-story house with a backyard. It's a nice little house. My father responded to Sakumo. Yeah, great for the two of us, the white-haired man said. We walked up to the door and Sakumo unlocked it. In no time Kakashi pulled me inside talking animatedly about the other things we were going to do. I got 5 feet into the house and through a doorway and into the kitchen before I felt eyes on me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood tall, and bumps appeared on my forearms. Reika? I ignored Kakashi before looking around. This feeling was never wrong. It's the feeling I would get when there was danger, or what my mind preserved as a danger. The feeling that saved my life on more than one occasion. Ignoring it led to my death. Reika, let's go, he told me. I didn't say anything as I looked towards the entrance. I heard panting and swallowed. Two-san, something is up with Reika, Kakashi called from beside me. He sounded annoyed but I couldn't really focus on what he was saying. I just couldn't. not with this danger lurking somewhere around me. My eyes widened as a large black dog emerged from behind the wall. I took a step back as he came into the kitchen. My eyes locked onto those of the beast, and my back hit the. There was screams from all around me. People spitting at me and grinning. Garbage was thrown around me, and I closed my eyes, focusing on my survival and less on the spectators. Tonight, his eyes were a dough brown. But he was far from docile. These eyes never looked away from me. He knew I would make him money. We have come to witness a very special match. A death match. I ignored his words, already knowing who it was. My hand was full of sweat and made the small hunting knife feel slippery. I was never told who I was fighting. It was a sort of tradition that you only found out once you were in the ring. Although it will not be against another fighter, the immortal will be fighting a death match against something more wild. I could feel the grin on his face. I span the knife experimentally in my hands. It felt foreign, as I was always better with my bare hands. Unleash the dogs. With that, the door on the other end of the area was opened and 3 dogs came flying out towards me. Their jaws were snapping with their eyes burning with rage. No, thinking back, it was fear. I did the only thing I could do. I fought to the death. Reika? I heard a voice say, "Stay away." I cried, pushing the person to my right away and huddled in the corner. My eyes never left the dog. It stayed put in the archway of the door and looked at me with eyes full of fear. They rushed at me, snapping their jaws and snarling. They backed me into a corner before one of them launched itself at me. I immediately brought the knife up to defend myself, and jabbed it into the dog's shoulder. The dog gave a cry, and I followed as pain laced itself in my arm. Pain also filled my leg and I fell onto the ground as one of the dogs tugged, whipping its head from side to side. Cries of delight sounded from around me. "Kill her, you fucking mutts!" Anger rose from inside me as I pulled out the knife and slashed one of the dog's neck. It died. I kicked out with my other leg and hit the other dog, whose teeth were in my leg, in the nose. Blood wet its mouth and dripped onto the floor. And the third took that moment to charge. And these spectators don't define me. I will prevail. Reika! I stopped screaming as my mind landed back in my body. The dog was gone and Tsukumo held a sniffling Kakashi in his arms near the door. It seems as if my screaming had scared the little guy. My breath was shaky as I swallowed my fear. I clutched onto fabric and my father held me close. "Sure. It's okay, Reika." My cheeks were wet, and I could see small red lines mark his arms. It looked like someone had scratched him. And it was all me. I heard him. He got up and hid my face in his shoulder. His hand threaded his way into my hair, and I could feel his hand shake slightly. "Sorry, Tsukumo." He apologized. I didn't hear the rest of the conversation as I tried to understand what just happened. I had a flashback of my old life. My PTSD was starting up again, and it was showing me memories I would rather forget. I fought my first death match when I was 20. I was someone already known for my ability to survive. I ended up killing all 3 dogs, with a large gash in my leg and another on my left shoulder. They had disinfected my wound, then bandaged it up. Giving me instructions not to overwork it, and to let it heal, they gave me my $5,000 for the fight and kicked me out. That man or his fucking son would come see me when my next fight would be. Reika. I blinked back to see a familiar environment. I was in my room. When had we gotten back? "What happened?" he asked. I froze before looking away. He placed me on my bed and sat next to me. I didn't say anything. I mean, what was I supposed to say? "Yeah, so I have this fear of dogs? 'Cause, well, I used to fight them in my past life." "Oh, and kill them too?" "Yup. That's part of the job description." "Yeah, how about no?" I curled into a ball and stayed silent. "Were you scared?" he asked me. "No," I growled. I flinched at my own tone. Before biting my lip, I just raised my voice to a hyuga, a traditional clan. One that would beat their children to have them obey them. A hand came close to me and I flinched. "Fear is not a bad thing, Reika." My father patted my head. I suddenly felt embarrassed and ashamed that I thought that he would hit me. This is a man that only gave me a lecture when I picked a fight with a pet of the main house. "Fear is weakness," I bit out. My emotions were raging and my head started to throb. "No, Reika." I looked into the face of my father and caught his soft smile. "It means you are human. That you have limitations. But limitations are weakness," I stressed. He chuckled before pulling back my covers, forcing me under them. He pulled them up around me and I gripped onto his brown kimono top. "Reika," he touched my head and brushed his fingers through my hair. "Limitations mean that you have found a barrier that you need to work to remove. It motivates you to progress in your training." At that moment, I think I really started to consider him my father. Someone to rely on. To look up to. Someone I could let come close to me. He was my father. "It makes you a better person." He bent down and kissed my forehead. "Do you understand?" I nodded. "I'm sorry, Ota-san," I whispered. I still held onto his clothes, but I looked away. "Everyone feels afraid at one point, Reika," he said. He got up and went to leave, but I didn't let go. He looked at me, clearly waiting for me to let go. "Ota-san?" I asked quietly. "Yes, my daughter?" he asked. "Will you stay with me until I fall asleep?" I asked. I could feel my cheeks burn in embarrassment. I felt his weight come back on my bed and shift. You will have to move over. He chuckled. I gave him a soft glare but moved over. He crawled under the blankets and curled around me on my single bed. He must have been uncomfortable, in such a tiny bed, but he didn't complain. I snuggled into his warmth and breathed in his scent. It was an airy, earth smell with a touch of citrus. I fell asleep to his breathing, feeling safe, in my father's arms for the first time in over 23 years. I woke up to a cold bed. My father's smell was still there and I smiled to myself. Breathing in, I held it for a good 30 seconds before exhaling. I then focused my chakra to my eyes before examining the household. It was quiet, almost too quiet. It was the next morning and my mother should have been home from her mission. I searched the house until I found both of my parents sitting at the table. They seemed to be having an important discussion. Like the child my body was, I got curious. I crept out of my bed and opened my door quietly. I could already hear their muttering but I couldn't understand them. So I crept closer. She's only 3. Why is they so adequate on placing it on her now? My mother cried. I was shocked when I saw tears rolling down her cheeks. Satomi, it's the clan's way. My father said. He sounded sad and quiet, distraught. They are also picking up on how she is not a regular child. How she is so much smarter than the others. How different she is. I don't care. My mother cried. Reika is my daughter. Hush. We don't want to wake her. He said. My mother settled down. Can't you do anything, Hisashi? She asked him. She seemed desperate. I froze, hearing my father's full name for the first time. Hyuga Hisashi. An important but minor character in the plot. The brother of Hayashi, the clan leader and the father of Hyuga Niji. The man who dies before his son's 5th birthday. My brother isn't clan head yet, Satomi. He said. I heard movement and saw how he got up off the floor to wrap my mother in a hug. Even if he was, I am part of the branch family too, my love. I have no power. My mother cried once more. It's all because of she trailed off. Isn't it? She asked. Through my Byakugan I saw him nod. She sniffed before I saw my father's arms retract from her. I'm going to check on her. My mother said. I sneaked back to my room before they could realize I was listening. Jumping under the covers, I faked sleep as the door opened. I'll try, Satomi. I heard my father, Hisashi, say, thank you. The door closed behind her, and I felt her presence behind me. She walked closer to me before sitting on the bed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I felt her hand brush my hair as I controlled my breathing. She sniffed before she laid down beside me and curled around me. Just like my father had done, my mother gathered me in her arms and pulled me close. Whether she knew I was awake, I would never know. But what I did know is that the wet marks on my kimono were not mine, and I still didn't understand the situation. I woke the next morning to my mother's sleeping face. I had never really taken the time to study her. I had always thought that she would end up like my other mother. Betraying me, not caring about me, neglecting me. But the more I learn about her, the more I'm convinced she's different. I had her rounder face, and her soft eyes. My father had sharper eyes and his face had a larger angle to it. Maybe Niji will resemble him. I looked more like my mother. I touched my nose and thought mine was pointier. Didn't have either of their nose. Hisashi Hyuga. Twin younger brother to the main clan member and next heir, Hisashi Hyuga. I sat up and looked at my hands. Was that even possible? They are part the parents of Rookie 9. No. They should be in their teens? I mean, Minato would have been 17 when I was born and that was the age Hisashi had been. I guess they were part of the older generation. I know that the Ino Shikacho group from this generation are younger, as well as some. I sighed trying to figure it out. If I was Hisashi's child it would mean that either I took Niji's place earlier on, or he will be my little brother. I suddenly felt giddy at the idea of having such an important character as a little brother. Niji was a character I felt was needed in the Naruto storyline but was never my favorite until he died. Like most fans, I really fell in love with him then. I froze before shaking my head. I can't think of this now. I don't even know if he'll actually be born. I slipped out of bed and tried not to wake my mother. Leaving the room behind me, I walked outside to the backyard where my father was practicing. His movements were graceful, but powerful. Forceful yet fluid. Good morning, Reika, he said, his eyes closed as he moved gracefully into his next stance. I snapped out of my trance to see him wipe sweat from his face with his kimono. Good morning, Ota-san. I answered. Come here, he said. I gave him a confused expression, and he smiled at me. I walked towards him before I stopped close enough to touch. We start sparring today, he said. Sparring? I grinned before looking down at my clothes. I was still in my training clothes from yesterday. Now? I asked. He smiled. Yes, I can honestly say that I got my ass handed to me and I didn't care one bit. By the end I had a few scoffs where my father had playfully jabbed at me. Laying on the patio floor, I caught my breath and watched the clouds float by enjoying the breeze. Are you listening to me, Reika? My father asked. I grinned sheepishly, and he gave me a soft smile. Maybe? I said. He snorted. At least she's honest. Came from the kitchen. We shared a laugh. Now Reika, I need to talk to you about yesterday. The dog. Kakashi and Tsukumo. Sound stopped from behind me, indicating that my mother listened to our conversation. My father must have told her. My fist tightened around my clothes and a wave of anger hit me and I shut my eyes tight. Control yourself, Reika. What are you going to do? He asked me. He was sitting on his heels, hands clasped on his lap. I was sitting with my legs crossed. My fingers found loose threads on my kimono and started to toy with it. Fear is not limitation, it is an opportunity to get better. I want to go see Kakashi, I said. And I will apologize for my behavior. My father let out a soft smile, and I knew I gave the answer he was hoping for. Your father has a mission later today, we can head over in the afternoon. My head turned to the door. With spatula in hand, my mother smiled down at me. I pouted, but I want to go now. With my mother's calming hand was on top my head, I stopped in front of the house. I was scared of dogs. That is a fact. But if I really wanted to have a friendship with Kakashi, I was going to have to face that. Konoha also has a clan that uses canines as their partners. The Inuzuka never left the house without their partner. So this meant that I will have to work with them. There was no choice. I had to face this. I moved to the door and raised a hand. Hesitating for a second, I scowled and knocked. I was tempted to use the Byakugan to see where the dog was but knew I would just find more. I heard tussling from inside and my insides turned. My mother shifted slightly and gave me a worried look, but the door opened before she could say anything. Reika-chan? Tsukumo looked down in surprise. Good afternoon, Tsukumo-san, I said. I made sure my eyes never left his face. My emotions needed to be conveyed. I wanted to know if Kakashi-kun wanted to play. The older male looked over me to my mother in question. I could feel the smile at her lips and the shake of her head. Of course, we were about to head to the park for a little training. You are welcome to join us. He gave me one of those closed-eye smiles. It's okay, I said fast. We don't have to go to the park. He looked at me in surprise. We can train in the backyard, I said with a soft smile. Tsukumo stares at me for a good amount of time before he descended to my level. Bull hasn't left Reika, and we have more dogs inside, he said honestly. I nodded. I thought so. He blinked, looked at my mother, and she gave a nod. I'm sorry for yesterday, I told him with a bow as he moved out of the way. I was caught off guard. The white-haired man studied me for a few seconds before he smiled and stuck his head in the house. Kakashi, yes? Came an answer in the next room. He peeked out and saw me. Reika? He asked. Hi, I said with a grin. I am sorry I scared you yesterday, Kakashi scoffed. You didn't scare me, Tsukumo laughed before nodding to the kitchen. Let's take this party inside. I moved into step at Kakashi's side as we were herded to the back door. The tears in your eyes said otherwise, I teased. You had them too, that's normal. I'm scared of dogs. He stopped as I jumped off the porch. You're scared of dogs? He asked in disbelief. I fiddled with my black training clothes. Yes. I had never seen them before and it scared me. I lied. It was as fluid as ever. I was a very experienced liar. Then why did you come? My dogs are not going anywhere. I saw Tsukumo talking with my mother inside. Both of them had a smile on their faces. They must have a close relationship like my father and Tsukumo too, because my friendship with you means more than my fear of them. He blinked a few times before I grabbed his hand. I bet you I can climb to the top faster than you, I told him, pointing to the willow tree in his yard. He snapped out of his trance. In your dreams. Months went by and I got much better with my clan's techniques. I incorporated chakra into my strikes. I had also begun to be quite proficient in my taijutsu. You might be thinking that it must have been hard for me to adjust to such a graceful martial art since I was used to the hit until dead styles, but it was the contrary. It was quite easy. This style was quite similar to the art of Bagwazang. Bagwazang was a Chinese rural martial art which stemmed from the ideas of Taoism and Feng Shui. It relied on the idea that qi was an internal force that circulated in your body, and to properly guide the energy, your movements had to follow a circular pattern. In turn, this circular pattern makes the move effective by redirecting the energy. I had seen an exhibition on it with my teacher in the past and had been quite fascinated by it. I had never really gotten the chance to really try it until now. I walked in a circular pattern, my feet crossing with my palm facing my imaginary opponent, and that was the only part one was not content with. In my old style, crossing your legs meant you were unbalanced. Turning around in the middle of a fight gave your opponent a way to attack. But this style was based on that, and acted on the response given to the opening. It was based on flexibility and speed, not so much power. Adding chakra to my strikes was also quite difficult. To start with, I had to visualize the chakra bending and thinning out like thread before pushing it through my pores. This being said, the only way I could tell if it was really working was by viewing it with my Byakugan. A knock sounded from the front of the house and I stopped my practicing. I caught the sweat that dripped from my forehead with my sleeve and moved towards the porch. I grabbed a hold of the cup of water my mother had placed there, and inspected the covered plate next to it. I grinned at the sweets that laid under it, before an urgent voice took my attention. Now? I heard my father say loudly. Footsteps came from my parents' bedroom and headed towards the door. The voices became quieter but more urgent. I activated my Byakugan and looked past the walls. A man dressed all in black was talking with my father and mother. All I could see was his mask and cloak. And my parents had their serious face on. I realized. Okay. We will meet you in front of the Hokage Tower in 10 minutes. By the time I walked into the house and my father shut the door, my mother was already in the bedroom changing. You have to leave? I said. My father walked towards me and picked me up. Yes, there was a skirmish on border, but the war already ended. I told him. Yes, it did, but there doesn't mean that there is peace, my daughter. He said. I was brought to my room and he got out my backpack. I understand. Where am I going, Ota-san? I asked. This situation was severe, so I swallowed my nerves and concentrated on helping him. He stopped packing some of my things. Sakumo will be staying here, so we will be leaving you with him. I gathered some of my clothes and handed it over to him. But Sakumo a really good fighter, right? I would think he would be called too. I asked. My father shook his head before tying off the bag. He is Kakashi's only guardian after his mother died, and Sakumo is a heavy hitter and tracker. He won't be needed for the type of mission that we are going on. Hizashi, I looked up to see someone in the door of my room. They were in the standard Umbu armor. The mask of a swan hung in their right hand. The Umbu tattoo was clear to the eye on the left shoulder. When my eyes caught sight of the face, I caught my breath. Reika, come. My mother said, holding out her hand. My father gave her my bag and I took her hand in mine. I felt useless adrenaline run through my veins. I have our packs, and I laid your uniform out on the bed. She told my father. He nodded before bending down to my level. I love you, Reika, he said and gave me a hug. He realized there was a chance he wouldn't come back. Anxiety filled me. I love you too, Ota-san, I told him. His hug got a bit tighter. I let him break it first, and he leaned back on his heels and pat my head. Be good for Sakumo. I grinned and felt a soft tug as my mother led me out of the room. Right before she left the house, she adored her mask. She lifted me in her arms and preformed the tiger seal. With a blast of wind and leaves, we appeared at Sakumo's door. She let me down and knocked on the door. Sakumo answered seconds later. I stayed still for a few moments, still quite dizzy from the fast movement. With one look, he nodded, obviously knowing what was up. Thank you, Sakumo-kun. My mother bent down and gave me a hug. When will you be back? I asked. She patted my forehead. Soon, Reika. She didn't know. Okay. I grinned for her. Stay safe, Oka-san. Then she was gone. I looked towards the Hokage Tower, as if I would see her again before I felt a tap on my shoulder. Come now, let's go tell Kakashi the news. Following Sakumo, we headed inside, closing the door behind me. I cuddled my bag close as we ventured to the living room. Kakashi. My best friend was on the floor, rather than on the couch, reading a book. Yes, Toussaint? He said, looking up. He caught sight of me, but someone else beat him to the punch. Hey! It's Scared Cat. One of the dogs snickered. I glared at the nickname. Bull, the big black dog that scared me months beforehand, looked over to the Inu dog before getting up and sitting on him. Oh. What the hell, Bull? The dog barked. That's what you get for insulting someone. Sakumo laughed. Hey, Reika. I swallowed my nerves before putting my bag near the entrance and walking up to Kakashi. Hi, I answered, sitting next to him. All the dogs were on his other side, so I childishly used him as a physical barrier. I'll be living here for the next bit. He looked over to his father, and an emotion passed through his eyes that I couldn't comprehend. Hizashi and Satomi are on a mission. A grin split on Kakashi's face. This means we can train together all the time. He got up and ran out of the room. I looked at Sakumo in question, but he gave me a shrug. Kakashi ran back and soon after with a paper and a pencil. Now we have to plan what we will work on, he said. This way we can train every day, so we can become great shinobi. I don't think I have ever seen Kakashi so excited. Out of the corner of my eye I saw Sakumo look at us softly and in happiness. Are you listening to me? I looked back over to the chibi and to the paper in front of us. It was split in half by a line of black. His name was marked on top one side while mine was on the other. Now I am, I said, taking a deep breath and trying my best to ignore my instinct to run away from the beasts not 2 meters to my left. And so I worked with Kakashi. Sakumo came back with some cookies of both human and dog friendly and placed them around the group. He had a cup of tea in his hand and he watched us work. Once in a while, he would give his input, but really he let us do our thing. By supper we had a good plan. Thus we ate, all 3 of us and 7 dogs. Then Sakumo had us take a bath. And yes, together. We were technically only 3, get over it. A grin never left my face as I stared at Kakashi's uncovered face. I bet you're jealous. But to be honest, there wasn't anything very special. It was kind of anticlimactic. I shrugged and put a load of bubbles on his head. He gave me his best 3-year-old scowl. This fiasco ended with Sakumo trying to catch both of us as we ran out of the bathroom naked. It was fun being a kid again. Causing mayhem had never been something I had done to my father in my past life. But I did it because I could in this life. While I had only done it once or twice with my now parents. Kakashi brings out the worst in me? Let's go, you two, Sakumo called. Bedtime. We groaned in sync before we started to laugh. I didn't like kids, but Kakashi was a special case. Although he had the outward appearance of a kid, he wasn't. At this point, I think his maturity level must have been at the level of an 11-year-old. Still a kid, but didn't laugh at fart jokes anymore. I liked him. In the platonic sense, that is. We were ushered into Kakashi's room and slipped into his covers, as we were both still small enough to fit. Sakumo gave Kakashi and I a pat on the head before leaving. With the door left open a tad, I yawned before facing the door and curling up for sleep. Kakashi did the same. I was happy, and I mean really happy. Although my parents were gone, I knew they would be back. Sakumo acted like one of those uncles that lets you get away with everything. And Kakashi was my best friend. With that thought, I couldn't help but compare the person that I thought to have been my best friend in my last life and him. The main difference was that she's dead. She died before I did. And she betrayed me, and all I hoped for was that history wouldn't repeat itself. A groan sounded next to my ear and my eyebrow twitched in annoyance. I sat up and looked over at my bed mates. Yeah, you heard me, mates. It took me 3 nights to understand why Kakashi was tossing and turning in his sleep. So let me ask you a question: what kid doesn't sleep with their dog? But I was here, and even though I'd been getting used to the idea of dogs being around, I was still on guard whenever they were. This idea surfaced during the 3rd night. Kakashi had tossed and turned so much, I was debating on suffocating him. From my position in the bed, I looked towards the door to see a nose peeking in. I immediately tensed. Brown eyes caught mine and I could see a sense of loneliness and of desire in them. It was a large black nose, so I was sure it was Bull. The large bulldog was big, but apparently still a pup. He was Kakashi's first Niken. I sighed before getting up. Reika? Kakashi asked tiredly. My 3-year-old self padded over to the door and opened it wide. Bull had his head on his front paws and was pleading with me. For the first time, I felt guilty for not getting to know the animal. I took a deep breath and nodded my head over to Kakashi. With scratching of the nails, he barreled into the room and jumped onto Kakashi. A squeal was heard before the kid laughed. Bull! The chibi growled. A soft whine was heard. When I turned into the room, Bull was draped on the kid. Padding back, I slipped under the covers and tried to ignore the large bulldog. This led to the next morning, a weight draped on me, trapping me. When I opened my eyes, I recognized the feeling of Bull draping himself between us with his paws trapping me in place. I looked at the dog in disgust before getting up. Kakashi's face seemed peaceful, like he was having the best rest possible. I guess the slobber in my hair was worth it. I sighed before walking out of the room. I smelt a mouth-watering smell and followed my nose to the kitchen. Hungry? Sakumo asked. I walked to the counter and saw one of the only things that I had missed from my own world. 4 waffles? Strawberries and whipped cream were next to it. Always. The white-haired man laughed and joined in. I brought over a chair and began to wash the strawberries by his side. Thank you, Reika. The sincerity in his voice made me look up from my task. You are welcome. I answered him automatically, thinking it was for helping with the food. But apparently it was not. When Niken are born, they are regular dogs. By working with shinobi, they are infused with their chakra. This allows them to be able to use it themselves. This allows for their brain to develop and can even slow their aging process. He told me. He removed a waffle from the machine and plopped it in a plate with the others. Pouring the mix back in, he continued. Bull is different. Yes, he's a puppy, and still growing, but by now, Niken are usually talking. I froze, looking up at the white-haired man. He won't be able to speak, right? I asked. No, he won't. He will still get the other aspects, but he won't be able to communicate. That is why he stays close to Kakashi. Kakashi accepts this and still wants to work with him. The other dogs used to bully Bull a lot because of this until we stepped in. He's a big baby, that dog, I told Sakumo. The man laughed. That he is. The 2nd week came and went, and I still had not received any information about my parents. I'm sure they will be back soon, Reika, Sakumo told me. I sighed before glaring over my shoulder at my captor. I regret 100% ever deciding that I had the courage to pet him. Because now he thinks I like him. I was reading a book on basic chakra theory, and the big baby came and laid his overgrown head on my lower back, in the process trapping me. The worst part is that Kakashi and Sakumo thought it was the funniest thing ever. I rolled my eyes as a knock sounded and Sakumo left to get the door. Kakashi laid in front of me studying his own book. I heard voices talking before Sakumo called my name. Bull groaned but moved so I could get up. I walked out of the living room and turned into the hall towards the door. Behind Sakumo I saw an older man. I looked at him confused, having never saw him in my life. But based on his long brown hair and pale eyes, I knew he was a Hyuga. Come with me, the older man ordered. I furrowed my brows before glancing at Sakumo. He shrugged his shoulders and moved out of the way. His eyes were full of suspicion. I passed him and followed the elder out, taking one last glance at Sakumo. Good day, Hataki-san, she will be back in an hour. We left and I sent another questioning glance at the elder Hyuga. His mouth was set in a line with his jaw tense. I followed the crabby old man for a while before the suspense was starting to kill me. Where are we going? I asked. A glare was sent my way but he stayed silent. This got me annoyed. Is it about my parents? I said immediately after. Be silent, brat, he growled. Studying him more, I noticed that he had no headband, nor any bandages. There was absolutely nothing on his forehead. And there was only one answer to who this person was. He was of the main clan. Why? I asked again, slightly angered. He ignored me once more as we turned into the compound and walked directly to the main house. The guards at either end of the doorway bowed to the man and led us inside. This was the first time I had ever been in the main compound. It was a large Japanese-style house with a porch all around the building. Surrounding the house was large stone walls. A hiss escaped me as I tripped up the stairs and hit my knee on the wood surface. The man never stopped. I ignored the sting and followed him towards the nearby room. He opened the door and looked at me expectantly. I sent him one last glare before moving into the room. It was dark, but it only took a few seconds for my eyes to adjust. Only 3 candles lit the room, revealing the tadamas that were littered with ink. My eyebrows narrowed in confusion as I took a look at them. The ink made a circle in the center of the room with various different characters branching out of it. A shuffle came from the right and I looked over to see someone was sitting in the candle light. It was my father. Too, I started with a smile, but it soon faded. It wasn't the same chakra. Similar but not the same. This was defiantly Hayashi. My uncle. A force smacked the back of my head and I hissed in pain. You insolent impurity. The older man behind me growled. How dare you insult the next heir of the clan by claiming they are of branch status? Anger flooded my being and I turned on the son of a bitch only for him to grab my arm. He forced me into the center of the circle. Kneel, he ordered. I growled at him, but got another smack across the face. Hayashi, he said, calling my uncle over. Yes, father. And that was my first meeting with my uncle and grandfather, who was still the head of the clan. By the time I picked myself off the floor, my father's elder twin was in front of me and my grandfather gone. I stared up into his face and saw a cold wall. An expression I had never seen on my father. No wonder Hinata will always be unsure of herself. Her father would never let her see behind his guard. His hand fit itself on my forehead, and reality came crashing down on me. A spark of pain flooded through the familiar white eyes before I could only feel one thing: misery. My body convulsed on the floor, as the after effect wore on me. It felt as if a nail was driven through my skull and into my brain. It is done, my uncle said, probably to my grandfather. You bastard. I croaked out, unable to stop myself. I was just able to focus my vision to see my grandfather glaring at me. More pain flooded my mind. I gripped my temples, my nails piercing my skin. Nausea took me and I puked up all I had eaten that day. Let this be a lesson, my uncle told me. Respect your betters. He turned around and left the room with my grandfather behind him. You are free to leave. I stayed in the room for a good 10 minutes, calming myself as best as I could. My body was weak and was not responding very well. I was clutching my head, as if it would make it go away. After what seemed like forever, I felt my body begin to listen to me once again. I slowly got up, my body shaking, and rubbed at my tear-stained cheeks. It wasn't okay. This really was not okay. This was slavery, and that is forbidden. No, I chuckled quietly. Nothing is true, only permitted. I wandered my way out of the room, leaving behind my puke for them to pick up, and left. My mental health was in danger. I felt broken. I felt abused. My feet took me to the forest near the park where I first met Kakashi. It was nearing supper at this point, and all the kids were gone. Therefore, it was the perfect place to be alone. I wandered far into the forest and sat by a tree. Fresh tears rolled my cheeks as I remembered the humiliation. It was fucked up. I got up and growled. My tiny fist hit the tree. And so did the other. The two alternated. How can such an archaic practice be allowed to go on? How many must fucking suffer? I cried out as a piece of bark lodged itself in my fist. I inspected my hands to see them full of blood and my knuckles busted. But my eyes wandered to the tiny hands I called my own. I was 3 years old. I wasn't an adult. I wasn't a threat. I was a Hyuga child. My palms were the next to get the abuse. They had been lightly calloused over from the past year but soon were covered in blood too. Hey! I ignored the voice in favor of destroying myself even more. Stop that! The voice cried again. All I could think about was how it sounded like hers. Shelby! A brown-haired girl growled. I picked my ear and rolled my eyes. Stop looking at me like that. You are going to destroy yourself. This is the only way, Caroline. I told her. What I didn't tell her was that I was doing this to save her. No! She growled again. You fucking liar! You can get a job anywhere else. Why the fuck do you need to? Hey! Someone grabbed my shoulder and I swung around to punch the fucker in the face but stopped recognizing who I saw. He looked younger than in the anime. His black hair much shorter and without the ringed scars around his eye. Instead, goggles took its place. Yeah, this was Uchiha Obito. What are you doing? He cried. I looked at him in surprise. His hands found my wrists and took a look at my hands. Your hands are full of blood, he yelled. He let go of my hands before pacing back and forth. Rin! He cried. His panic was somewhat amusing to me. It was almost like a breath of fresh air, distracting me from my situation. His hand gripped my wrist, careful not to touch my hands, and dragged me along. Putting my heels into the ground, I stopped all movement. I'm not leaving, I growled. Okay, he said, not bothered at all by my reluctance. Stay right here. I'll be right back. As fast as he came, he left. This left me wondering what exactly happened. Uchiha Obito. The kid that is supposed to die but ends up working as the bad guy. The reason behind the murder of so many people. I looked at my hand, ignoring the blood, and studied the clean area. It was in the shape of a small hand. Obito's hand, or maybe not. He is not that person yet. He is still a blank canvas. A child with the ability to change in any way. To walk down his path as Madara or to truly become the Obito that is behind his mask. I'm back. I looked up to see the kid running back towards me, his hand in another's. The brown-haired girl was another that I recognized. 2 purple rectangles marked her cheeks. Noera, Rin. I looked at both of them with an indifferent expression, studying them. They were both young, but older than me, probably around 4, maybe 5. Obito! The girl scolded. Don't just drag me out here without a reason. I do have a reason, he said. That's when she saw me. I've never seen someone's face change so fast. Oh my! She came towards me and took my hands in hers. Screw me for being curious. I let her do what she wanted. She studied my hands as I examined her. Her brown hair framed her chubby kid face. Cheeks slightly puffed out, accenting the tattoos on her cheeks. She was cute. I must say Obito chooses nicely. I tuned her back in and began to actually listen as she attempted to lecture me. What were you thinking? She grabbed her pouch and brought it forward on her belt. You can get an infection and die with something like this. She dug through the pouch and presented tweezers to pick out each piece of wood in my hand. I stayed silent watching her work as she kept scolding me. My eyes looked beside us where the potential disaster was pacing back and forth. Worried. That was the expression that rushed across both of their faces. How could one be so worried for someone they just met? That thought puzzled me. There. Rin finished up with the bandages and put her hands on her hips. Is she going to be okay? Obito cried. I don't know, Rin, but her lip. You should go to the hospital. I just started my medical training. I don't know this stuff. She's going to die. Obito paled. I snorted in laughter before looking at my hands. Thank you, I said to the girl. She gave me a smile and clasped her hands behind her back. My pleasure. My name is Noera, Rin. But you can call me Rin, and I'm the great Uchiha Obito. I stared at him blankly as he grinned without a care in the world. It was blinding. Like the sun. I'm Hyuga Reika, I answered, trying not to seem rude. They did take care of me. Nice to meet you, Rin said. Obito stuck out his hand and I just stared at it. I looked towards my bandages to his hand. Oops. He grinned and scratched the back of his head. Dare I say it, he looked adorable. And those big gray and orange goggles that looked so unbelievably awkward. I almost let out a snicker but slapped my hand on my mouth to stop myself from making a sound. Thankfully neither caught it. So what did the tree do to you? I raised an eyebrow at Obito's question. You were beating it like it took your lollipop or something. Sorry for the trouble. I was angry, so I figured it would be better than hitting someone's face, I said. I looked down, slightly uncomfortable with the situation. These were kids. They shouldn't have to know the dark side of the world. At least not right now. That will have to coming soon enough. You should have just punched them, Obito said, fixing his goggles. I watched Rin look at him distastefully. Violence isn't always the answer, Obito, Rin responded. He grinned sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head. Things are not always that simple, I told him. He narrowed his eyes in confusion, but his words were cut off. Obito, where did you pull Rin off to so while you teach FULLY? Nope, I'm out of here. Thanks again, I said, turning around and started towards the forest. Let's meet again, Obito cried after me while Rin chimed her goodbyes. And don't forget to take care of your hands. I looked back and gave them a smile. I was touched they were worried. No one had given 2 shits in my old life, and I really have to stop comparing the two. Sakumo stood still and looked down at me in shock. Hi, Sakumo-san, I muttered. Moments passed and neither of us said anything. I could feel his eyes burn at the sight of my forehead. The green seal burned bright, branding me. His knees hit the floor and he pulled me into his arms. I'm so sorry, he said. I could feel him tremble. You couldn't have done anything, I said. He pulled back and I saw how his eyes moistened. This was clan business. He wet his lips before brushing my hair back and studied the seal. He traced the nail marks that had punctured my skin at my temples. I let him, there in his doorway, me still outside and him inside. Sadness and guilt plagued his eyes. He sighed before the vulnerability in them was covered up. He gently took my bandaged hands and led me inside. He avoided the living room, where Kakashi probably was, and led me to the bathroom. Closing the door, he sat me on the counter and got the first aid kit. I sat there, looking at the floor, letting my hair fall into my face as his fingers unwrapped my hands and he studied the damage I did to them. He never asked how I busted them. Sakumo had a good sense of character. He probably already knew. Big cracks ran in my knuckles and my palms looked like hamburger meat. Who took care of this? He asked, inspecting the care. A girl I met at the park. He nodded and got out a few things from the first aid kit. She did a good job, he praised. But I am going to disinfect this again to make sure all the wood is out. It will sting. I felt the tingle and breathed deeply. I could handle pain, but I don't handle humiliation very well. He then rubbed a cream on it and bandaged it up again. I refused to look in his eyes. Pity wasn't something I took to either. He took care of the cuts on the sides of my head at the same time. We can bandage it up, he said. Like your parents do, so no one will ever see it. I looked over into the mirror to stare at the seal that branded my forehead. Tsukumo stayed silent. No, I won't hide it like that. Can you cut my hair? I asked him. He looked surprised but nodded. He put away the kit and grabbed a pair of scissors and a comb from the drawer next to him. I put my hair in front of my face and he combed it through. With a few clips, my long brown hair fell away and I had bangs. It was a way to cover it up and not be too obvious. But with any rough movement, they would move and show itself. I wouldn't be ashamed of this branding. The seal means they are scared of me. And of what I can do. And I will make it so that they will be scared. They will pay for what they have done, eventually anyway. Maybe when I become Jonin and have influence. Well, if I survive that long, I'll wear it like this, I said. Tsukumo chucked and shook his head. Hungry? He said. I shook my head. Okay, you can head to bed early if you want, he said. I left the bathroom with him and walked straight to Kakashi's room. I undressed myself, put on pajamas and laid down to sleep. Minutes later, the door opened quietly and two figures moved into the room. I recognized the tiny patter to be Kakashi. Even more so as he rushed to get ready and curled up, his back touching mine. The other heavy steps and pushed his cold nose into my ear. I twitched, moving back, just enough so that the big baby could crawl on the futon with Kakashi and I. This caused me to be trapped in the middle of the two warm bodies. Bull gave a whine and cuddled closer to me, and so I cried that night. I cried so hard but so silently. Clutching the fur of the animal that terrified me the most, tears ran down my cheeks. And not once did my witnesses say anything. They let me deal with my emotions, but their body heat was more than enough comfort. For the next week, that incident plagued my dreams. Nightmares fought to destabilize me, and I couldn't control them, but for some reason Bull could. He knew, and he pulled me out of them each and every time. He would nudge me, lick me, or stick his cold ear in my nose. Then when I was awake, shaking in anger and fear, he would wake Kakashi, who would snuggle closer, or the dog would do it himself. It was obvious that both of them knew me by now. They knew I didn't like having people notice my discomfort, that I refused to feel weak in front of people. I faced my own problems. And Kakashi was only 3. And he knew that. The kid was incredible. Good news came once the calendar flipped and a month had passed since I had come to live with Tsukumo. This came in the form of my mother. I had been at the park with Kakashi, hanging around the monkey bars, and discussing the next step of our training when I felt someone stare at me. Too lazy to turn my head, I used my chakra to activate my Byakugan. Noticing my reaction, Kakashi also looked around. A grin split across my face and I dropped from the bars to run towards where Tsukumo and my mother stood. She was dressed in her traditional kimono. And it was like she never left. I tackled her legs and didn't let go, even when she stumbled. She laughed before bending down to give me a big hug. Welcome back, I told her. She kissed my cheek and smiled. It's good to be back, she said. I don't think I've ever seen you run that fast. Tsukumo laughed, his hands on his hips. I stuck my tongue out at him. I saw Kakashi hanging back a bit, and walked back over to him. Gripping his hand in mine, I pulled him over. Once I came back, my mother was looking at me in sadness. Her eyes were wet, and she put her hand on my head. Only then I noticed the sling around her arm. I stilled and she brushed just a bit of my bangs to the side, so she could see the seal. She gave me a soft smile before removing her hand to take mine. Thank you very much, Tsukumo-kun, Kakashi-kun, she told them. No problem, he said. She didn't cause that much trouble. A wink was passed my way and I suppressed a smirk. If Kakashi and my crazy addicts were anything to go by, aka messes and kunai sneak attacks and streaking, yeah, we were very animate. Come back soon, Reika, Kakashi said. I smiled. And it was a real smile. Kakashi is real. He's not a character in a story. This is my life now. And the kid is worming himself into my heart just as my parents and Tsukumo-san had. Will do. And then we left. My mother walked away with me and I could still see sadness in her eyes. Oka-san? I asked. She shook her head in response. It's nothing, Reika, she said. How was yours and Ota-san's mission? I asked politely. It was a success, she said. Both your father and I have broken bones, but we are okay. I nodded and we entered the compound. An immediate weight fell onto my shoulders as soon as I did. Confused, I looked around. A couple of my clanmates were looking at me. It was a look that I hadn't seen in a while. And it made me flush. They looked at me as if they were better than me. Come, Reika. I looked towards my mother and saw the guilt in her eyes. We turned towards the house and went inside. Hisa, my mother called when we got in. I'm on the porch. I took off my shoes and ran out to the backyard. Like he said, his legs were spread out before him, with crutches on his right. His back was to me and I took advantage of that. Ota-san, I yelled and tackled his back. He laughed and held onto my arms, which wounded itself around his neck. Hello, Reika? He turned slightly to give me a proper hug. I miss you too. I smiled and pulled away. Were you good for Tsukumo? he asked. I responded with a sly smile. Apparently our daughter thought it would be fun to talk Kakashi-kun into streaking with her across Tsukumo-kun's house. I looked over at my mother and grinned. 4 times. It was fun. They laughed, and my mother joined us on the floor. We will pick up your stuff next time we go over, my father said. I nodded and started to retell more stories, most of them being about our training. Kakashi can now walk up and down a tree 5 times, I said, proud of the kid. He really was a genius at 3. Oh? My father asked. And what about you? How long does it take to make you tired? I fidgeted with my hands and looked away in embarrassment. 10, I lied. It was higher than that. My parents stared at me in shock. That's when I really understood how different my control was. Is that bad? I asked. No, Reika. My mother hurried and said. It's actually very good. Most people don't learn how to walk up trees until they are in the final year of the academy. Oh, I said, clearly shocked. I had forgotten that fact. My genius. My cheeks reddened. I was happy but also quite wary. I had to tone it down my abilities a bit. After all, Danzo does exist. His eyes went to my hands and he took them in his. What happened? He asked. His voice sounded strained and shocked. He was talking about the scars. The day after I was given the seal, I was brought to a medical neon that Tsukumo knew and he healed my hands. But the scars still remained and would only fade in time. I looked away, keeping my mouth shut. Reika, tell your father and I please, my mother asked. I looked over at her before submitting to their wish. I was angry, I said. I felt like pulling my hands back, to growl and tell them to fuck off. But for the first time, I didn't want to. These people were nice to me, they appreciated me and they loved me, so I started to train. My father looked over at my mother, and a message passed between them. Is that why you have bangs now? He said. His face was hard and it was the most angry that I had ever seen him. I'm sorry, Reika, my mother said. Tears ran freely down her cheeks. You should have never went through that alone. She hiccuped and hid her face in her hand. My father brushed back my bangs and stared at the seal. I wasn't alone, I told them. I caught my father's eye as he looked at me in surprise. What do you mean? He asked. I had Tsukumo-san, Kakashi, Bull, I told them. My mind wandered to my outburst in the forest, and I had Obito and Rin. A lone tear rolled down my father's cheek. I wasn't alone, I told them as I gripped my pants. I'm never alone, and for once I believed it. My father chuckled and pulled me into a big hug. Then we are sorry that we were not there, he replied. I felt content. My life was falling into place. I could help but realize that my current life, even though I am growing up in a militaristic society, I feel more loved than when I belonged in the civilian. And who are these Obito and Rin kids? My mother asked after a couple of calming breaths. Obito Uchiha and Rin Noira. I met them at the park. I motioned to my hands. After this, then I remembered the whole thing between the Hyuga and Uchiha. They hated each other, didn't they? I sat there looking between my parents before my mother sighed. I guess we will have to meet up with them next time. My mother told my father. Everything is okay. I was safe. I had friends and family to look after me, and I was improving. I think I'll be able to achieve something in this world. Time went by and the fated meeting came. Well, you're a fart face, Dobe. I sat on the swings next to Rin staring as the two became idiots, arguing over the littlest of things. Should we stop them? Rin asked me, clearly worried. I smiled and began to pump my body, swinging high. Watch. Once I was at the perfect height, I slipped off a shoe and aimed it directly at the boys. It hit Kakashi's gray head first before smacking into Obito's. Digging in my heels, I stopped myself and laughed. Reika! My best friend growled. I stuck my tongue out, causing Obito to laugh. Rin giggled into her hands next to me, his angry face calmed as he picked up my shoe. Walking off, I watched him wander around with it. What are you doing? I asked. I had a bad feeling and got off the swings to see what he was doing. He found what he was looking for, bending down and hovered my sandal over the substance. Try it, I warned with a glare. He brought it closer. I launched my attack as soon as his eyes left me in favor of the pile of dog shit. I pushed him back and my sandal went flying somewhere else. It seemed like he was expecting it, and immediately got into a superior position. Play fighting only went so far as I gained the upper hand. I could hear Tsukumo and my mother laughing at our antics, with Obito and Rin cheering us on. We continued for a couple of minutes until we heard a splat. We both froze, me pushing up his chin and him trying to shrimp out from under me. Iwiwu! Obito cried out in disgust. Oh no! Rin said, her hand trying to hide her smile. Poor Obito. Oh my. My mother covered up her laugh with her sleeve and watched Obito run to the grass and try and wipe the shit off his sandal. Why do we hang around him again? I asked my best friend. You tell me, he said, taking my hand. He nodded his thanks before brushing himself off. You introduced him to me. Are you guys ready to eat? Tsukumo called. The three of us walked over to the picnic blanket. Kakashi sat down, ignoring the curses from Obito, leaving Rin and I to stare at the navy blue and orange clad boy. I looked into the cooler and pulled out a water bottle. Tossing it to Rin, I nodded to Obito. She got my subtle hint and ran off towards the Uchiha. That was nice of you, Reika, my mother said. I plopped down and dug into the food Sakumo made. I shrugged my response and grabbed a rice ball. Obito and Rin came back soon after, and with my forgotten sandal too. Thanks, Rin, I said, slipping it back on my foot. You're welcome, she grinned. They sat with us and we ate. Don't steal my piece of meat, Obito growled, gripping onto the other side of the piece. I got to it first, loser, Kakashi Sakumo warned. So what? I was eyeing it. I sighed and looked over at Rin, who was clearly worried. In one motion I snatched the piece from the boys and turned to the other girl and shoved it between her lips. Hey, Reika! And thus I continued to feast on this delicious meal. Obito's late, Rin said, worry-laced her voice. We sat in the last row of the gymnasium of the academy. It was our orientation. A mandatory orientation. And we were already an hour into the meeting. The instructor spoke in front of the 6 rows of children in front of us. I was in the middle with Kakashi to my left and Rin on the other side. Beside her was Obito's empty seat. What do you expect? This is Obito. Kakashi sighed. Their relationship was still rocky, but at least Kakashi didn't complain about Obito's presence anymore. Well, maybe not as much. Rin passed me a pile of envelopes, and I glanced at the sole copy in her hand. In the show, she had taken another one for our walking disaster. I watched her open it and start to examine the papers we received. There was nothing on Obito's seat. She didn't grab another one. I looked back down at the pack and sighed. I guess I will play the hero. My fingers curled themselves around 2 envelopes. I then passed the packages to Kakashi. Each one of you hold the future of the village, and this is your first step in becoming great ninja. The instructor grinned. Who knows, maybe one of you will be the next Hokage. The room erupted in chatter, and the teacher walked off the stage, dismissing us. In silence we moved out from the large gymnasium and out to the courtyard. Sakumo and my parents were still talking inside. They seemed excited. What proud parents sending their children to their deaths. My eyes closed and I followed Kakashi's signature to an empty area of the courtyard. Obito never came. Rin started, worry lacing itself in her voice. He's an idiot, he'll never be a ninja at this point, Kakashi said to us. That meeting was mandatory. Without the papers we got, acceptance is futile. I bit my lip from laughing. We are the Borg. Resistance is futile. Oh, Star Trek. Coming through. Shaking my head, I gave the extra package to Rin. But we were only supposed to take one, she said. My finger found my lips. I won't tell if you don't, I said. She grinned as Obito finally caught sight of us. Is it over? He cried. He bent over to catch his breath. There was this old lady. I couldn't leave her. She was carrying so many bags, and she could reach to put them away, and her granddaughter wasn't home. He gasped. What do you think, Do? Kakashi snorted. Tears started to form behind his goggles, but he struggled with holding them back. You should have been on time, Obito, I scolding him. It's okay, I guess. He grinned, rubbing the back of his head. I guess I can try again next year, faker. I nodded to Rin and she presented the package to Obito. Ray, I cut her off. You're lucky you have such a great friend like Rin. I grinned. The young Uchiha screeched and jumped Rin, enveloping her in a big hug. I smiled at the scene, not to mention I was glad that I wasn't the one subjugated to that torture he called a hug. Eyes bore into my head from beside me, but I ignored the intense stare from my best friend. I'll answer him when he actually asks me the question. I wasn't the hero type. I never was, so I will work from the shadows, helping but never taking credit. That is what I decided. This marks a big step in your lives. Are you excited? My mother asked. She stood in her traditional robes, her arms still in the cast. Obito stopped his screeching and gave a thumbs up. You bet, he said. This way I can finally beat Kakashi. Good luck with that. The later snorted from behind me. You 3 have to work harder now, Sakumo said, placing his hand on his son's head. I smiled and nodded. Yes. Rin held her hands in front of herself and clutched her folder. And we are all start together. A smile made my way across my face, and in the presence of my friends. These kids, no matter how silly they may seem at the moment, are important. They are what sets the tide into motion. I watched Kakashi roll his eyes at Obito, who waved his hands animatedly, and Rin, who laughed, hiding the sound behind her envelope. These kids are what breaks or makes this world. So why was I placed in this world? Why in this time? I didn't know I was biting the inside of my cheek until I heard the small clank of crutches beside me and felt a hand lay itself on my hand. Don't worry so much, Reika. I looked up at my father. He was watching the others. I looked over and saw. My mother was talking with Rin while Sakumo was trying to split up the 2 boys. They were my precious people. I'm not worried, I lied. He chuckled. Right. I frowned before he started to laugh. Whatever happens, will happen. My daughter. He took his hand off my head and held onto his crutches again. You cannot let it stress you so early on. I'm not. You are your mother and my daughter, my little genius. He interrupted. You see things they do not, possibilities that they don't think of. He was right. My eyes left his face before making its way back to my friends and family. There are things you cannot control, but that does not mean you are powerless. He shifted. There will be times when a horrible situation arises. This is the life that is laid out for you. You will feel guilty and you will curse yourself. But you must remind yourself that you did all you could to prevent it. I felt naked in that moment. I felt like my father had just dissected me, like he knew me better than I knew myself. It was amazing how much of an open book one is to their parents. You are the main character of your own story, he said. So make sure you know that you have a choice in how this story is written. The clan? I whispered. Irrelevant, he said. My eyes snapped up to his. We are destined to protect the main branch, but today marks the first day that you are becoming something bigger. A ninja has a primary duty to their village above everything else. Yes, father, and thus, I made a promise. Not to my father, nor my mother, my friends, or the powers that put me in this mess. I swore it to myself. Kakashi, Rin, Obito, you will not die. And I swear on my second life. I will change the future, because starting now, this is my life. I was annoyed. Very annoyed. With who? Let me give you a hint. It's a woman. Brown hair too. Rin grinned and chatted with the bane of my life. My mother grinned at me from over her shoulder, and I sent a glare. Cheer up, Reika-chan, she said with a cheerful smile on her face. I dragged my feet down the road, slowly making my way. She was so happy about this, and I couldn't care any less. I had told her that I could just wear my black turtleneck and pants to the academy. But no. Oka-san is set on getting me a whole new outfit. She even went behind my back and invited Rin to go with us. Speaking of the child, it's going to be fun, Reika. She grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the shop. Shinobi wear. I looked up at the sign and wished it would burn. The was faded, and I almost snorted in amusement. Where became war. And this shop is selling us the tools which will prepare us to fight. A gentle push moved me forward, and I forced myself to walk in. Welcome, the shop dealer called from in back. I looked around and immediately noticed how little there was in terms of clothing for adult shinobi beyond fishnet barriers, traditional black underclothing, and shoes. In contrast, there was so much for children. Wow, Rin said from behind me. Why is there so much clothing for kids? She asked my mother. My mother laughed, ushering us towards the clothing racks. Usually, shinobi and kunoichi already know what their outfit consists of. My mother explained. Thus we usually have our outfits handmade. Wow! Rin was almost jumping for joy. I'm glad at least she's happy. We can stop by the weapons store after to buy some kunai and such. My mother brushed my hair back with her unhurt hand and kissed my forehead. Right on my seal. I gave her a soft smile. Before looking around, while Rin ran straight to the right, looking over loose shirts. I sighed in defeat before moving to the left. My eyes moved through the ranks and my fingers touched the material. Too scratchy, too thin, too thick, too hot, not warm enough. Girls, my mother called. I walked back empty-handed. Rin had at least 4 outfits in her hand. I stared openly as we had only been here for 5 minutes. Now you have not had a chance to start kunoichi classes, but I'm going to give you some pointers for outfits now. She looked at the clothes that Rin had with her and studied it for a moment. So you two are the total opposite. She laughed. One wants too many clothes, while the other doesn't like any. She patted Rin's head. Before she started to lecture, everyone has different likes and dislikes when it comes to clothes. But whatever it is, you need to pick something that screams you, she said with a smile. If you get put in the bingo book, this will be outfit characterize you and will project an image on your enemies. I frowned. What about those who decide to stay with the standard uniform? I asked. My mother smiled. Usually that is because they have noticeable characteristics that already take care of it. I thought back to future Kakashi. Slanted headband, one Sharingan, and law. Defying silver hair. Genma? Bandana headband with a samban in his mouth. I get it. I nodded before looking over the ranks again. This is going to suck, but right now you should be trying out different outfits. You'll eventually find the right one, and it will change as time goes on and different events characterize you. I silently processed her words. I get it, Rin replied. We also have to keep in mind what kind of ninja we want to be. Exactly, my mother said. I understand, I said, looking over the racks. So since Rin wants to be a medic, she should have her hands free, nothing going past forearms or wrists to facilitate healing and emergency surgery. My mom blinked in surprise. Yes, exactly, Rin grinned, giving me a fast hug. Thanks for the tip, Reika. I gave her a small smile before turning to my personal hell. We finally got out of there 4 hours later. With everything we needed, Rin bought a few short-sleeve pink shirts and some black tights. With her budget being low, due to being an orphan, she didn't have the luxury of getting more expensive clothes. I have given my mother a look soon after, and she picked up extra school supplies such as kunai and scrolls at the weapons store to help Rin out. I personally chose a basic outfit. As a hyuga, everyone will know how I fight. Our taijutsu is distinctive, therefore I need some sort of cover to confuse others with my hand movements. I chose a basic black kimono top with a mesh undershirt. The sleeves of the kimono flared out, effectively hiding my hands. It was tied with a red obi, and I had black tights underneath. Think similar to young Orochimaru but in black and ending at upper thigh. I had also snagged red ribbon, which I now tied my hair back with in a ponytail, leaving only my bangs to frame my face. I must say, it was cute. I approve of both of your outfits, My mother smiled and we walked down the street with them on. I'm excited to go to school on Monday now, Rin said, bouncing up and down. I rolled my eyes. I was definitely not looking forward to it. How about going out for some mochi ice cream? She continued. Both Rin and I stopped walking and eyed my mother. Strawberry? We said at the same time. Yes. We shared a grin and followed after my mother. We walked into the same room that the Rookie 9 would use years into the future, and I snorted in amusement. Oh, the irony. What's so funny? Kakashi asked. I shook my head before climbing the steps so we could reach the back. I reached the window seat first before plopping down. Kakashi took the seat next to me and started to take out his materials. Such an organized little shit. I would have hated him in my old life. I was good in school only because I had an excellent memory. I often wrote down my notes, but never looked them over afterwards. I guess I was also hated because of my lack of studying. But this only pertained in the topics I was interested in. For instance, history, ancient languages, religion, modern Greek, and gym. I was good in those. My grade would average a 90. French? Science? Mathematics? Fuck them. I passed with a 65 and I was happy. I placed my head on my arms and looked out the window. I was not looking forward to school again. Hi, Reika-chan, Kakashi-kun. Rin said, moving up the stairs to sit in the seat in front of me. Morning. I said, leaving my head in my arms. Tired? She asked. I sent a small glare, and she giggled. Rolling my eyes, I ignored her in favor of watching the other kids spill into the classroom. Red spiral eyes. Definitely Kurani eye. Orange sunglasses and Spike's black hair. Aoba, brown shaggy hair with a black cloak. I cocked my head to the side. I didn't recognize him. I let my eyes follow him up the stairs before taking the last seat in the middle row. His small hands pulled out his school supplies. He placed his bag on the ground and sat in his chosen chair. Not even a second later he placed a pencil between his lips. I smirked into my arms. Genma. My attention was suddenly taken by a loud clap from the front of the classroom. At first I didn't recognize the young man. He was tall and thin, with brown hair tied in a high ponytail. He had dark eyes with a thin mustache. The flak jacket covered a long-sleeved black turtleneck, with mesh peeked out from his sleeves. All right, class, settle down. He called just as the door suddenly slammed open. My white-haired best friend huffed in disbelief beside me. I swear I'm not late. Obito yelled. You could have fooled me. Sensei said, raising an eyebrow at the troublemaker. Obito grinned before looking over the class. I let my hand drop and pointed to the seat we had kept for him. He caught my eye and ran up to take his spot with a smile. I raised my head towards the front of the class, and laid it on my hand. My eyes closed slightly and I let my mind lowly drift off. It's too fucking early for this. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yumino Ikaku and I will be your instructor for the next few years. My eyes snapped open and my head fell off my fist, almost hitting my desk. Kakashi caught the movement, and raised an eyebrow in question. I shrugged, brushing off the look and sat up straighter, now giving our sensei my full attention. His eyes caught each of ours like he was trying to memorize who we are as he spoke. I'm currently a chunin, and will be in charge of your learning in every area of training. He picked up a piece of chalk from the board and outlined the week for us. Every day we will start with attendance before moving outside for a morning workout, then kunai training. He said. His handwriting was neat and clear, but I don't even know if all the kids even understood what he was writing. But who would have thought that I would get Irika's father as my teacher? From what I knew, he was supposed to be strict. I hummed to myself, listening in as he continued. Afterwards we have a break before we continue with chakra theory and history of the great nations along with various other topics depending on the day. Lunch follows where you will have an hour break. Taijutsu training and gendered classes follow. Gendered classes. I glanced at Kakashi only to see him focusing 100% of his attention in front of us. So it wasn't just the kunoichis who had to go to special classes. The boys had to as well. If kunoichi classes were to help girls become more feminine, then the shinobi classes was for boys to be taught to be manly. Sexist much? Today we will only be an introduction to everything, the real training starts tomorrow. He stated. He placed the chalk back down and brushed off his hands. Any questions? When do we get to learn cool ninjutsu? One of the kids asked. He snorted. Your last year. What? Obito cried. But I want to learn it now. Too bad. He cut off before answering another question. How long do you think it will take us to graduate? Kakashi asked. Yumino-sensei smoothed out his mustache and took his time answering the question. Usually you can get out when you are around 10. He stated before averting his eyes. I recommend that you take this time, but if you have potential, you can apply for an early graduation starting at the end of your first year. I watched Kakashi's eyes narrow as he settled back in his seat. It was a typical question from him. He wants to prove himself. To live up to his father's reputation. Our teacher continued to answer questions, but I was no longer paying attention. I bet you I'll be out within 2 years. Kakashi looked at me expectantly. I snorted before burying my head in my arms again. We will be taking this year's graduation exam. I predicted. A piece of chalk was sent my way, but I caught it before it could hit me. That was mean, sensei. I called out. I placed a piece of chalk on my desktop and looked at him. Pay attention, Hyuga. Ready to go, Reika? Rin asked. I sighed before getting up off my seat and grabbing my bag. I took one look at my collection of chalk pieces. There was 3 pieces. I grabbed them before following Rin to the front of the room. While the boys stayed with Yumino-sensei, the girls were going outside to meet our kunoichi teacher. Here is your chalk, Yumino-sensei, I said with a smirk. If looks could kill, I swear I would have died 3, now 4 times today. We are going to have trouble getting along, aren't we? He asked. I pursed my lips. Don't worry, sensei, you will only be with me for a year. I told him before leaving. I ignored the surprised look he sent me before following Rin out the door. Why only a year? Rin asked. Yumino-sensei is our teacher for the next few years. Kakashi and I are planning on trying to take it this year. I said following her. But you are only 4. She said. We have at least 4 more years to go. Since you guys started early, I hummed but didn't answer her. I wasn't going to leave Kakashi to graduate on his own. No way. When we reached the outdoor training grounds, I looked around curiously for our teacher. I wanted to know if it would also be someone I knew. I was actually quite excited to know, not for the class. Just the teacher. Come around, future kunoichi. A strong feminine voice said. Rin and I followed and took a seat near the back of our group of 18 girls. The kunoichi must have been in her 30s easy, maybe 35. She's had long brown hair which was tied up in a ponytail. The standard jonin outfit and vest covered her body. All in all, she looked oddly familiar. She clapped 2 times and everyone fell silent. My name of Biwako Sarutobi, and due to a lack of available kunoichi at the moment, I'll be overseeing your classes until a replacement is found. Holy shit, that's the Hokage's wife. Chatter erupted and the girls looked excited. My eyes caught Rin's and suddenly I felt as if this class may get somewhat more interesting. The stares of hate were shot down the moment I closed the door. Our house. Tadaima. I called, slipping off my sandals. Welcome home, Reika. My mother called. How was your first day? I wandered to the back porch, where my mother was sipping on tea. Not bad, I said. It was all introductory information. How do you like your teachers? I made myself comfy beside her. I am interested in what they will be able to teach me. But I'm afraid I will become bored. I admitted. Who are your teachers? She asked. Yumino Ikaku and Sarutobi Biwako. Lady Biwako? My mother said, surprised. I nodded my head. You lucky girl, she said with a grin. I took out a scroll and handed it to my mother. We had all got one, told to give it to our parents or guardians. She opened it and read through it. It is your training regiment for the next few years. A frown appeared on her face. What is the matter? I asked. I'm afraid that you, and probably Kakashi, will be pushed forward, she said with a sigh. She put down the scroll and looked out to the trees that surrounded our little yard. I had guessed as much. How long do you think I will be in the academy for? I asked her. She patted my head and her smile turned sad. Not very long, she answered. Is that bad? I asked her. She took a sip of her tea. I just wish you would have a childhood, Reika-chan. Her fingers tightened around her cup. But I know I will not be able to hold you back for very long. My daughter the genius. I blushed. My mother never really called me that. It was a name my father had taken to calling me. Even if this genius, as they puts it, is only because of my previous life. If I had a choice, I would like to play dumb, I admitted to the woman. My mother looked at me shocked, obviously not expecting those words from my mouth. But someone has to look over my baka best friend. I told her. I couldn't help the soft smile that appeared on my lips. Looking over at her, I was surprised to find her eyes wet. You are too much like me sometimes, she said, pulling me in for a hug. Is that a good thing? I asked before I could help myself. I have no idea, she laughed. Her arms were warm, and I snuggled into her embrace. It was rare to let myself be held like this. It felt like I was weak, but if I had to be honest with myself, I loved it. Smack! I caught the chalk and placed it beside its 3 other friends. Now that you are up, Hyuga, will you please solve the mathematical equation on the board? I think Yumino was starting to get annoyed with my lack of attention. But I really couldn't help it. I was bored. Therefore, to relieve this boredom, I was using my time wisely and was working on my chakra control. I would slow and speed up the flow, then concentrating it in various spots like my hands, then seeing how much was the bare minimum to get it to stick to objects. I looked up to the board and read the question. We sped through addition and subtraction and started on multiplication. 8 by 10. 80, I said before placing my head back on my arms. Omnio frowned, clearly not happy that I already knew that. But he ignored me before continued his lecture, leaving me to smirk in response. That's what you get for trying to pick on me. My eyes drifted to Kakashi. His eyes were facing toward Yumino-sensei, and it looked as if he was giving his full attention. A small movement from under his desk caught my eye, and I leaned back to sneak a peek. He held a leaf on his hand. Watching it, the leaf slowly moved on top his hand. That little brat was doing the same thing I was. I smirked once again before checking on the other 2. Rin was writing furiously, clearly paying attention, but Obito on the other hand looked like he was about to burst. His face was red, and I could almost see the steam coming out of his head. Alright, that is enough for now. Yumino-sensei called to us, successfully catching my attention. Lunchtime. He barely had enough time to speak before half the kids ran out the door. 4 times. Obito grinned. Really, Reika? I'm bored. I groaned. Rin and Obito laughed, and I toyed with the pieces of chalk on the desk. It will get harder as we continue, it is still basics at the moment, Rin said. Kakashi snorted in disbelief, and I was in agreement. Rin got out her lunch and motioned for us to follow. Once outside and sat together under the nearby tree. Obito and Rin occupied most of the conversation, with Kakashi putting his 2 cents in every time Obito said something stupid. Judging by the pinch in his mask and his comments, I think Kakashi was amused by the Uchiha's reactions. That's why he riled him up on purpose. I just enjoyed the show. I lay back on the ground and closed my eyes. I still had not come up with any sort of plan concerning the events that were to occur, except for the fact that I would work from the background. If I could, I will make it so that no one could trace the events back to me. Somehow, I sighed before draping my arm over my eyes. But my first task would obviously be getting Obito and Kakashi on better terms. Shut up, you chibi old man. Stop fighting, you two. HN. That's an Uchiha thing, copycat. Oh my, I have my work cut out for me. Another thing I had to figure out was what type of fighter I was going to be. Like you have probably guessed from the information I have given you. In the past, I was a MMA street fighter. I had studied many different martial arts, and fought many as well, making me a mean taijutsu master in a civilian world. But since I was no longer good enough, and I couldn't really use those types, I had to come up with another way. Are you guys excited for tomorrow? I cracked open an eye to look at the energetic Uchiha. Why would we be excited about tomorrow? I asked. We start sparring, Kakashi said. I groaned. This is going to be even more boring. The only person in my level in taijutsu was actual Kakashi himself. I'll finally kick your butt. Obito grinned, pointing to my best friend. Good luck. He muttered. He sneaked bites every once in a while, waiting for the right time when Rin and Obito were too distracted and not looking. What type of fighter do you guys want to be? I asked suddenly. I figured that I could probably get some good ideas from them. A kick-ass fighter with amazing jutsu that will earn me the Hokage seat. Obito grinned, giving me a thumbs up. His other hand toyed with the goggles on his eyes. It was actually quite cute. Whatever you say, Dobe, Kakashi said, riling him up again. I tuned them out and focused on the other female in our group. Well, I want to be in Medicine, Rin said. She touched her cheek in thought, right on her rectangular marks. But I also know that I'm going to have to fight, so I would love to be like Lady Tsunade. Being able to use super strength and our knowledge of the human body to attack weak areas. I could see the sparkles in her eyes already. I laughed at her fangirling before turning to the last kid of the group. I want to be well-rounded, Kakashi replied, but I think I want to focus a bit more on ninjutsu and kenjutsu. I was surprised to know that he was interested in kenjutsu. But I must say it was fun. I had tried various different weapons in my old life. Sword fighting happened to be one of my favorites. That along with bow staff, archery and kali sticks. I smirked to myself. I might actually become the first Hyuga to fight with weapons. What about you, Reika-chan? Obito asked. I sat up and pursed my lips. I don't know yet, I said honestly. I have my clan taijutsu and my Keikai Genkai as my main arsenal, but I don't want to be stuck either. So I have to find something else. Ninjutsu? Kakashi asked. To cover long distance. I think weapons is more her thing. Obito grinned. A Hyuga with a weapons specialty. That would be so cool. His eyes shined and I could help but laugh. What about genjutsu? Rin asked. I cocked my head. I didn't take that into consideration. I said, thanks Rin. You too as well. Rin and Obito grinned. What are friends for? The bell rang and I groaned. Taijutsu class, Rin said. We got up and made our way inside the building. Reaching our class, Obito pounced in his seat, clearly excited. Alright class, Yumino-sensei picked up another piece of chalk before turning to the board. He placed numbers 1 to 5 in horizontal order. Tomorrow we will be starting sparring, so we need to go over some rules beforehand. The class erupted in chatter, clearly excited. Woot! Obito cried, pumping his fists in the air. Rin giggled and Kakashi rolled his eyes. Holding my face up on my knuckles, I smiled. They were so innocent it was unbelievable. Settle down, he growled. The room fell silent once more. Rule number 1. He began to write on the board. Under no circumstances is deadly force allowed to be used. What does circumstance mean? Someone yelled out. Our sensei sighed before answering. It seems like he forgot that most of the kids in the room were between the ages of 5 to 6. I was the youngest at 4 with Kakashi only a month and a half older. Let me rephrase that. He erased what he wrote and wrote something else. In no way or time is movements with the intent to kill or really hurt your opponent allowed. Now that's a phrase that these kids would understand. He continued with the second rule. You are to follow my instruction. If I tell you to stop, you stop. All these rules were a no-brainer. No Keikai Genkai. That sucks. I huffed. I had yet to try the Byakugan in a spar other than with my father. Another piece of chalk came my way and I grabbed it from thin air. Missed me, sensei. Whack. I cradled my forehead with my hand. Detention after school today, Hyuga. Shit. Pfft. Obito laughed. Serves you right, Reika. Oh wow, you too, Uchiha. I stuck my tongue out childishly at Obito, and he frowned, still rubbing his forehead. I was actually proud it took this long for me to get a detention. Out of the corner of my eyes, Kakashi sent Rin a glare. This made her erupt into giggles from under her hand. I raised an eyebrow, placing the 2 pieces of chalk with the other 4. It was a record. 6 pieces? A piece of paper was passed my way, and I looked at Kakashi in question. Was he trying to get in trouble with me? I bet Rin that Obito would be the first to get a detention. She bet that it would be you. What did you bet on? I stole Kakashi's pencil and wrote it below his chicken scratch. I know, it was surprising. Food, I better get some. Kakashi snorted in laughter before I crumpled the piece of paper and flicked it at Rin's shoulder. It bounced off and landed in her lap. I smirked as she didn't react but was slowly opening it with her fingers. I watched as Rin wrote her reply before stretching back. The paper flicked onto my desktop and I opened it discreetly under the desk. Kakashi shifted to look at it as well. But of course, Reika-chan, I grinned. Did I ever said that I loved food? Well, I do. A lot, Reika-chan. Can you please explain to the girls why your outfit would be beneficial when fighting? I got up from my spot on the ground and faced Biwako-sensei. Yes, sensei. I said before looking down. I have a mesh underlayer to act as a light armor. My black tights act as a flexible material to help with my taijutsu. This way my legs won't get stuck this way and I don't have to tie down the ends of my pants. My sandals are open-toe and thick-soled to aid with the flexibility of my feet. The thick soles also act as an extra defense and for comfort so that running long distances do not injure my feet. My kimono top is tied shut, to prevent my upper movements from being stalled. The sleeves are loose to hide my hands. By hiding my hands I can conceal not only weapons, but due to my family's Kekkei Genkai, it also aids in confusing my opponent as to where my hands really are and which chakra point I am aiming for. That is why I chose this outfit. I sat back down next to Rin and concentrated on Biwako-sensei's reaction. She was silent for a few seconds, but a small smile appeared afterwards. Very good, Reika-chan. She looked around for a few seconds before calling on someone else. But for the rest of the class I felt as if I was getting a little bit more attention than the other girls. Sometimes it was directly, as in being asked a question, while other times it was more of a look. I didn't realize that was the reason why you chose the kimono top, Rin said later on. I shrugged, stretched and got up off the floor. It was detention time. We made our way to our classroom where the boys were and walked in as they were pouring out. I made my way up to my seat. I'll pass by your house with my dad on the way home, Kakashi said. Thanks, I told him. He nodded and left. Bye, Reika-chan. Obito-kun, Rin called, catching up with Kakashi. I looked over at Obito to see him staring at me. It all your fault, he whined. I rolled my eyes. You didn't have to comment. Shut up, he muttered. I couldn't help but snicker. Enough, you two, Yumino-sensei said. We looked up to see him standing next to us. What do you want us to do? I asked. The desks haven't been cleaned yet, he said. I looked up to see 2 cleaners and rags on his desk. Neither has the chairs, Obito groaned. A great ninja shouldn't have to clean chairs. Great ninja listens to instruction and does not complain. Union-sensei smiled. Yes, they do. They need to be able to understand what is the right decision to be able to make it, I said. I didn't realize I said it until I felt a glare. The floor needs to be swept as well. I frowned but kept my mouth shut. He walked down the stairs again and headed to the door. I'll be in my office if you need me, he said and closed the door behind him. A few seconds passed before Obito turned to me. Reika, Obito growled. Couldn't help myself, I answered with a shrug. I descended the stairs and reached for a bottle and cleaner. Making sure the lid was on tight, I threw it to the hyperactive Uchiha. He sighed and caught them. What do you want to focus on? I asked. Chairs, he said before running to the back. I rolled my eyes before starting with front desks. I listened to Obito's grumbling with amusement, before deciding to take a different approach. Are you having a hard time with anything? He stopped working with a chair in the air, and looked at me. No way. I'm great, he said. Right, I teased. Just you watch. I'll be Hokage someday, he said, pointing at me. The chair almost slipped but he caught it in time. You do that, Reika, he whined. Believe me, I couldn't help but laugh. I do, Obito, I told him. The chair finally fell from his hands, barely missing his head. Really? He said. I nodded. But before you can become Hokage we have to get these desks cleaned. But this sucks. Get back to work, you two, a voice called from outside. Yes, sensei. Butterflies danced in my belly as I exited the school with Obito chatting away next to me. I spied my mother waiting by the gates, but refused to look at her face. Someone's in trouble, Obito teased. I sent him a glare but he laughed it off. I'll see you tomorrow, Reika. He ran off soon after, leaving me to the mercy of my mother. I watched his back as he speed past her saying hello before taking off alone. Reika. My attention turned back to my mother and I continued my way to her. Hello, Oka-san, I said cautiously. She raised an eyebrow and folded her arms in front of her. How was school? She asked. I shrugged, waiting for the nagging to start. Use words, my daughter, she scolded. I sighed. Boring. I answered. And yours? A smile appeared on her face. It was wonderful. I got my cast off, and when I got home, your father had made me lunch. Then we sat down and read for a few hours, enjoying the fresh air on the porch. We continued to walk down the street, heading towards our district. Then when I was preparing supper, Sakumo-kun and Kakashi-kun came by. She said, "They told me that you had a detention, so I had to come pick you up later." I waited for the unavoidable scolding. I invited them in, and the four of us ate supper. Her voice was soothing, and not a hint of anger or frustration was laced within. Soon after, your father left to meet with his brother, and Sakumo-kun and Kakashi-kun left to go home. I left at the same time to come get you. Honestly, it was a bit annoying, this suspense, so that was my day. She said. I stopped in the middle of the road and stared at her. "Reika-chan?" she asked, her head tilted in confusion. "What are you not angry?" I asked bluntly. "I got a detention, that's bad." She stared at me for a couple of moments before she turned her face, bringing her hand to her mouth. Her shoulders shook and my gut dropped. A snort came from her mouth before she couldn't hold it, and she clutched her sides in laughter. "Angry? For a detention?" She laughed. "I brought shame to the clan," I cried. She bent down and gathered me in her arms. I held onto her shoulders as she held me on her hip. My small size hit me hard in that moment. I was so small compared to her, even though I was technically older. "I am going to tell you a secret," she said, brushing a long piece of my brown hair out of my eyes. "Despite what Hyuga children are supposed to be like, your father and I realized very early after your birth that you would not be anything like them." She walked on, carrying me as we went. "So we are not going to expect that you are going to behave like them. Honestly, I do not think you can. I can be respectful and obey when I want to," I said, just for argument's sake. "I know you can, but when you feel comfortable with someone, your true personality bleeds through." I blinked in surprise. "You are really not that sneaky, my daughter. You should not have to feel as if we are trying to suppress you. But that still does not explain why you are not upset," I challenged a teacher during class. I told her, "We know, and your father owes me another meal because of it." She grinned. "What do you mean?" "I had bet him a year ago that you would get a detention within the 2 months of being in school. He bet that it would be in the 3rd. You both bet that I would get a detention," I said in disbelief. "Them too?" "Yes." She laughed. She put me down near the gates of the district. "Do not get me wrong, I am disappointed that you challenged someone in the position of authority. But it was a small comment. You know better than to put yourself or anyone else in danger." I followed her into the house. "Does this mean I can have a detention and I will not get in trouble because of it?" I asked. "No, you will not," she said. "But should you get one, I will not come and get you. You will have to walk home alone. Is that clear?" I grinned. "Crystal. And please do not go crazy." Now, imagine my surprise when a small boy was ushered inside the classroom the next day, surprised and slightly panicking. "Good morning," the boy yelled, a flush to his face. "My name is Might Guy. I will be joining the class as of today." "I can't believe he got in," Kakashi muttered next to me. "He's weak, can't even mold chakra." I frowned at his response. "Chakra isn't everything, Kakashi," I told him. My dad said the same thing. I hummed and looked at the boy. "Ah. Rin-chan. Obito-kun," he called out, waving his arms back and forth in excitement. I cringed. The monstrosity is coming near us. He had a messy version of his later mushroom cut, and wore an orange bandana around his neck with a gray sleeveless jumpsuit. It was better than his later uniform, but still looked awful. "Perfect. Noera Uchiha, I hope you can aid in getting him adjusted in the class," Umnio-sensei called. I groaned, realizing that he was going to be the newest addition to our little gang. "Yes, sensei, and so that is how I met Might Guy. Now we will be doing one-on-one spars today," Yumino-sensei stated. We sat on the dirt in front of him. He held a clipboard in one hand and a pen in the other. "When I call your name, you will face off in front of me." Kakashi sat silently to my right with Obito was practically bouncing up to the other side of me. Rin was beside him, and Guy was next to her. Thank whatever higher power is out there that I had not caught his attention that much as of yet. "And please keep in mind the rules we spoke about yesterday," he said before checking his list. "No intent to kill, obey me, and no Kikei Genkai." He sent me a glare and I pretended to find my feat interesting. Noira Rin V.Su Hikarinai. I watched the two girls move up front to the circle and face off. Their guard was high as they waited for the OK start. They ran at each other and Kurinai punched first. Rin thought she had it dodged, but due to inexperience, it caught her ear. I sighed, watching the baby fight. I really couldn't wait for them to grow older and actually know how to fight. Then, at least, I can hope that they could give me a run for my money. The fight ended with Kurinai's win. Rin had a scratch on her cheek and tears threatened to spill. "Nice try, Rin-chan." Obito grinned. "Next time you'll bet her." She smiled and nodded, rubbing her eyes from the tears. Hataki Kakashi V.S Yamashiro Aoba. I caught Kakashi's eyes and bit my lip not to laugh. Little to say, it took only a few seconds for Kakashi to win. "Wow!" everyone exclaimed. Kakashi had literally swept the other boy off his feet. Definitely simple, but impressive to the kiddies. Kakashi Hataki's win. Kakashi walked back towards me and I bit my lip to hold back my laughter. Annoyance showed, clearly expecting the fight to have lasted longer. Hyuga, Reika, and Shiraniganma, I sighed, before getting up and slowly making my way to the circle. Now Reika, remember what I said about Keikai Genkai? Yumino-sensei asked. Yes, sensei. I responded with an eye roll. Genma put his fists up and grinned, obviously thinking that he had the advantage. Go. I shot forward and dodged his punch only to sneak around him. I secured his chin in my hand before sending his body to the ground with a small tug. I also added a pinch on his nose in good fun. This caused the class to erupt into giggles. I gave him a small smile in fun. Honestly, I really liked Genma. He was probably up there in my Naruto crush list along with Kisame, Itachi, and Minato. Reika, Hyuga win. He frowned, but I offered a hand. He took it, and we preformed the seal of reconciliation. We went back to our spots and I laid down next to Kakashi. Tell me when it's over, I said, and fell asleep. This was really fucking boring. We need to move up, very soon, or I will go crazy. A month passed and I was starting to get antsy. I caught another piece of chalk, my head still down in the crook of my arm. I placed it with the others and continued to train my Byakugan. I watched Yumino-sensei's lip twitch in annoyance before concentration and following his movements. I also took in the other movements of quite a few members of the class, checking to see how many people I could keep track of at the same time. Other than Yumino-sensei. Obito's fidgeting, Guy's head scratching, and young Asuma's nodding head was the blunt of my focus. Smack. I put the piece of chalk with the others. I struggled to add Genma chewing on the end of his pencil, but it was hard. Smack. Ow. I cradled my elbow and glared at my teacher. The asshole hit my funny bone. The class started to laugh and I swallowed my anger. I didn't understand why Kakashi and I were still here. We were both bored as hell and getting the best grades possible in all subjects. I don't understand why we haven't advanced. Detention, Hyuga. He snapped. I glared and looked out the window. I wanted out of here. I was sick and tired of being treated like a kid. I finished dusting off the cabinets in the back of the classroom and stood up. I don't think this room has ever been this clean. Even on the first day. And I pretty much cleaned the whole fucking place myself. I muttered. I left the room with my bag on my shoulder and walked towards the office. Ikaku. My hand stilled on the door handle and I backed off. Not too much, but not enough so that if someone walked by they would not realize that I was snooping. I sat against the wall and looked down. I released my hair from my ponytail and let it create a wall masking my face. You will be in big trouble if you don't report it. I activated my Byakugan and looked through the door. Yumino-sensei stood with another teacher, both speaking animatedly. I'm not advancing those children. Akiko-san. Yumino-sensei said. An uncomfortable feeling settled within my chest. Was he talking about us? When the Hokage finds out that you are holding back 2 protégés, you are going to be in big trouble. We are on the brink of war once again, Ikaku. But that's the reason why. My teacher raised his voice. I can't send those kids out to war. They are barely 5 years old. Both of them. I'll be honest and say that they can probably graduate within the year. But they will not have had a childhood. A bang sounded from behind me and the wall vibrated. He had punched it. I can't do that to them. You will lose your job as an academy instructor, Ikaku. The other instructor stressed. You might actually be banned from applying for your Jonin exam as well. I held in a gasp. So that's why. I wiped away the tears that were gathering. I know. He said, his voice shaking. But these kids are my students. I have to protect them as much as I can. You can't say that to them anymore. The other teacher placed a hand on Yumino-sensei's shoulder. You'll lose everything. It's only a matter of time. One of your students is a girl. Biwako-sama is her teacher. It would be crazy to assume that she hasn't picked up on her genius yet. They were silent for a sec. It will be worth it. I quietly got up and patted my way back down the hall. Instead of turning into the classroom, I took the exit and walked out to the courtyard. Reaching to one of the wooded stumps, I began to lash out with my palms, just like I did the night I got my seal. Hot white rage poured out of me. How dare he? He wasn't much older than I was. I was 28 years old, not a child. I could handle whatever was thrown at me. I was good enough, and no matter what he does, Kakashi would be graduating this year. I brought back my hand for another hit and felt something wet hit my forehead. Blinking back tears, I looked down at my small blooded hand and tears blurred my vision. They looked tiny. Like a child's. The waterworks started and I tried to dry them off as fast as could, but they just kept coming. Streaks of blood appeared below my eyes, from rubbing with bloody hands. I was a child. That's how he viewed me, because to him that's what I was. Yumino-sensei was a good person. He was trying to protect us. But it would be in vain. I took a few deep breaths before willing away my tears. Reika! I heard someone call. I grabbed my sweat-soaked kimono sleeve and wiped as much of tears and blood as I could. Once presentable, I turned towards the academy to see my teacher coming. I was wondering where you went. He growled. I shrugged. I'm surprised you didn't shoot a piece of chalk at me. I replied half-heartedly. He glared. Very funny. His eyes took in my face and a flicker of emotion passed. His eyes turned to the stump. Really? He sighed. You got blood on the stump. He bent down and grabbed my hands. I looked away and he took in the damage I did to my palms. You were outside the office. It wasn't a question, so I didn't answer. His hands flowed green and the wounds slowly closed. I shivered as a gentle breeze blew past us. I'm not saying that you two can't hold yourselves, he started. I shook my head. I know, sensei, I said. Thank you. Surprisingly, his eyes watered. You are such a troublesome student, he growled, before focusing back on my hands. Careful there, sensei. You might be catching the Nara disease. He smirked. I think out of the two of us, you have it the most. I grinned. The anxiety and anger slowly dissipated from inside me. He let go of my hands and I marveled how only little scars were left. Thank you for protecting us, sensei. He looked at me in confusion, not quite getting where I was going with this. Thank you very much. My little hands patted his head. But we will be okay. He looked at me wide-eyed. You have got to be kidding me, Reika. He growled. You are 4 and Kakashi is barely 5. War is brewing and you don't know what that means. I looked up at the sky. Either way we will. He fell silent. War affects everyone. He gritted his teeth. I don't need a 4-year-old to tell me that. And yet you refuse to let us graduate when you know it is coming. I think it is better as we are sent out now, where even though it is a fake peace, we are able to grow a bit before the war than being forced to graduate, and being sent out completely unaware. He froze, staring at me like I had grew another head. You really don't talk like a 4-year-old. He growled out. Neither does Kakashi. I said, my hands tightening beside me. It because I wasn't. Oops. I hope they don't think I'm some sort of spy. We fell into a silence. It was tense and any onlooker would be confused if they had seen us. I take kunoichi classes, Yumino-sensei. I said. That's common knowledge. He said, confused. What are you getting at? Biwako-sensei probably has already figured out that I should skip years. And she's probably already told Hokage-sama. I looked to the side. It's only the matter of time that they find out about Kakashi. I grabbed my bag from the ground and put it over my shoulder. I know, Akiko-sensei told me. Then save your efforts for those that need it, Yumino-sensei. And I then left, leaving him to think. But it wouldn't be until late that night when I would get home. The sun was already setting when I walked into the clan grounds. My empty bag was over my shoulder, and the immediate feeling that I was being watched weighed down on my shoulders. This hatred towards branch members had only amplified when I got back from staying with Sakumo and Kakashi. I could feel the glare of my clanmates. And it was not just the main family either. If the glares were anything, even the branch families hated each other. It was messed up. The glares, the snarls. They looked at me like they were better than me. I tightened my fist. Damn traditional douchebags. I rounded a corner, passing between 2 walled yards, and there was no excuse. I was distracted by Yumino-sensei's words and I didn't realize the 2 people that were talking could have been a risk. I guess I had been lulled into a sense of security in this world and forgot everything I had learnt in my previous life, and I didn't think it would get that bad. Thus I didn't have time to react as one of the teenagers threw me into the wall. I hissed in pain but was punched in the gut. Well, the brat is back. They looked like they were still in the teens, but not genin. I was slapped across the face. Definitely chunin, and at my level I couldn't fight them. Go die. They growled. It was a blur as they hit me and punched me. I hit the ground over and over again and curled my body into myself. I forced my eyes to stay open as pain laced my body. I also used my limbs as cushions, trying to minimize the damage they did to me. What use did that make as they were 16-year-old, going after a 4-year-old? I really couldn't do much. I raised my elbow high enough and positioned it so that when one of the boy's feet slammed down on it, it was poking the sole of his foot. Remember stepping on Lego? Not fun. Oh. You little bitch. My head stung and he kicked it in. Whites spread across my vision. Fucking impurity. You are a waste of space. One growled. I forced myself to fake being knocked out as they walked away. When they were far enough, I peeked out and activated my Byakugan, memorizing their face. I got up slowly after they rounded the corner. The world span. It somewhat reminded me of going into the teacups at fairs and amusing parks. Using the wall as a support, my vision turned red and heat erupted in my core. They would pay. Oh, will they pay? They will be subjugated to the worst torture I can imagine without killing them. But first I needed to fix myself up, and maybe grow up a bit. Reika? I ignored my mother's voice and went straight to the bathroom. I locked it, and pulled myself up onto the counter with a hiss. Stabilizing myself, I could barely make out my face due to the fogginess in my vision. Nausea followed swiftly. The boys had did a number on me. My lips were cut open and there was a scratch on my cheek, probably from a boot. Bruises were forming on my temple and right eye. I lowered my hands and felt up my ribs, checking for cracks and pain. My fingers pushed on my right side and I hissed. They were definitely bruised. Reika? I heard my father ask from the other side for the door. Yes? I answered. What's the matter? He called. Nothing. I hid. Don't know why, I mean they were going to see anyway. I undid my kimono and looked at the bruises that were starting to form on my chest. I was actually afraid to evaluate my limbs. All I knew was they hurt. Reika, please open the door. My mother called, her voice serious. In a minute. I wet a cloth and scrubbed my face, arms and legs fast. attempting to get off all the blood. Now, my father said, all kids know that voice, you know, the one that said that if you didn't you would be in even more trouble than if you waited. I glared at the door before finishing as fast as I could. I hopped off the counter but my balance was off and I hit my knees instead. My vision turned and bile rose. I bit my lip and breathed, calming myself and holding back the vomit. When I felt my balance come back, I rose and unlocked the door. Not a second later my father entered and took one look at me. What happened? He asked like it didn't faze him. Of course not, they had the Byakugan. That meant they probably knew the moment I walked in. My mother knelt beside me and looked into my eyes. I got into a fight, I muttered, trying to focus. She has a concision, my mother said. I was surprised to hear anger in her voice. And I must say it was terrifying. I could only imagine what it would be like to be an enemy when she is on one of her Umbu missions. When? He asked me. His voice was even and calm. At school, I hissed as my mother pushed not too gently on the bruise around my eye. Do not lie to your father, she told me. They were both Umbu. They could tell. Walking home. Who attacked you? I fell silent, my vision wavering. My mother held me still as she looked over my other wounds. She removed my obi and opened my kimono, looking at my ribs. Please tell us, Reika, my mother asked. I looked away, refusing to say anything. They will not be caught up in my fights. I don't want them to feel guilty. Guilty for bringing me into this world. And into this family? I don't want them to regret me. A tear ran down my cheek and my eyes closed to the bright light of the bathroom. My mother enveloped me in a hug. We should get her to the hospital, she told my father. I was comfy on her shoulder. It was soft, and her warmth was lulling me to sleep. But it's dangerous to go to bed with a concussion. The darkness in front of my eyes grew more and more comforting as I felt my body being moved. Don't worry, Reika, we are heading got the hospital now, I heard my father say in my ear. I was transferred into his arms and I faded into the dark, knowing that there was a chance I was going to regret sleeping. The next time I opened my eyes, white assaulted them. The next thing I noticed was the body was curled around me. I looked to the right and noticed a head of silver hair. The sun was coming in from the window and I shut my eyes in discomfort. Are you awake? I looked over into the eyes of Tsukumo. There was no one else in the room. Yes, I answered, shielding my eyes. Good, you gave us a bit of a scare. Your mother popped by my house this morning to tell me that you were in the hospital. He smiled and nodded to my best friend. He was totally passed out next to me. I poked his cheek and he muttered but didn't wake up. He refused to go to school. I looked back towards his father. He said that he wouldn't learn anything anyway, he'd rather be with you. I smiled softly. I guess I've already made an impact in this world without trying to. Just wait till I actually start doing shit. I frowned. When I can actually come up with a coherent strategy. You don't have to frown, Reika-chan, he said. I was brought back to this world. Your father went downstairs to get a cup of coffee and Hokage-sama had to call Satomi in for a quick mission. I nodded, feeling suddenly more exhausted than before. I looked over to my medical chart on the side of my bed. How bad is it? I asked. Tsukumo reached over and grabbed it. You're pretty mature, so I'm not going to beat around the bush, he said. He flipped through the pages for a few moments, and I waited patiently. I could tell that I had a concussion like I thought, and it still hurt to breath. Bruised ribs. Concussion, 3 bruised ribs, greenhorn fracture in your right arm. I guess that's why they bandaged my arm and placed it in a sling. Various bruises and cuts litter your body. And your left tibia is bruised, I groaned. Out of everything, the concussion and the bruised bone is going to suck the most. A bruised bone takes just as long as a fracture to heal, but hurts almost twice as much. There was nothing regular doctors could usually do about that. Tsukumo continued. You are scheduled to be seen by a medical ninja sometime tonight, he said. I nodded but immediately regretted it. My head pounding and my vision clouded again. Tsukumo guided my body down into a vertical position. Is it okay for me to sleep? I asked. He smiled. Yes, don't worry about it, he said. Get some rest. We'll talk about what happened after. Reika. My eyes twitched and I groaned. My whole body ached. That's right. I was in the hospital and those blasted Hyuga Chunin jumped me. Reika, get up. The medical ninja is here to heal you. I slowly opened my eyes. It wasn't as bright, and someone had clearly closed the blinds, but my head still span. My father's hands guided me into a sitting position and I looked around. Kakashi and Tsukumo were gone, but there was a new lady. She looked average, blonde hair, brown eyes. Hello, Reika-chan, she said, coming into my view. My name is Izumi. I'm going to take away most of the pain now, okay? My eyebrow twitched at her tone. She was treating me like I was a 4-year-old kid. Once again the situation crashed down on me and I realized that was because I really was a 4-year-old kid. I scowled and ignored the knowing smile my father had on his face. Thank you, Izumi-sensei, I muttered like a good child, trying to at least be polite. Her hands came close to my head and green flowed around them. I could immediately feel the difference. I sighed as the pressure and dizziness disappeared from behind my eyes. The nausea also left me. I enjoyed the feeling for the next few minutes before she moved to my arm. She healed the fracture, then moved to, thankfully, the bruised bone. She sighed afterwards and asked me to lie down and raise my left arm. I did so, and she healed all 3 ribs. The stress the wounds had caused left my body, and I felt my body relax. I could see normally now. I'm prescribing a week off school and training and some painkillers, she told my father. My eyes were slowly closing again, once again exhausted from the healing. I wasn't able to completely heal the ribs and bruised bones, so this is a precaution. It's better for the bone to heal naturally anyway. This way it strengthens. Thank you very much, Izumi-sensei. I saw the shadow of my father bow, and the ninja left the room. My father bent down and kissed my forehead. Rest, Reika, we'll talk in the morning. And against my will, I lost consciousness. Shut up, Baka. Why don't you shut up, team? Why must you two fight? My mind slowly started to gain its bearings, and I almost groaned. Kakashi, Obito, and Guy were to my left, all of them speaking in loud voices. All I wanted was to sleep. Did you say something, Guy? Kakashi asked. Why are you so mean? The future taijutsu master cried. Now you're making Guy cry. Obito growled. Thankfully my hero came in a familiar form. How about all 3 of you tone it down or get out? I peeked out and saw the little girl sitting to my right, addressing the boys in the room. Reika-chan needs her rest. I could help the words that came out of my mouth next. My savior. I groaned. Reika! Obito launched himself on the hospital bed, Kakashi climbing up beside him a tad bit slower. How are you feeling? Rin asked. I could see tears swelling in her eyes. I winced and sat up. I'm fine, please do not cry, I told her. She nodded and tried to shake it off. You didn't seem fine this morning, Kakashi said. Yeah, you had us worries, Obito said. Tears were forming in his eyes as well. Not you too, I groaned. But out of everyone, Guy started first. He threw himself on the bed and I flinched away. We were so worried. Ugh. Rin and Obito started to cry too, and they threw themselves on me. I looked at Kakashi and pleaded with him. But what happened next shocked me the most. My eyes widened as his eyes also started watered. He turned away quickly. Chibi Kakashi fucking Hataki is about to fucking cry. I looked down at the kids in my lap. It must have been a funny sight, if my father's laughter was anything to go by. Alright you 3, Reika needs some room to breathe, my father said. But she could have died. Obito sobbed. Holy shit, there was snot on the blanket. But I didn't, and all 3 of you are getting buggers on me, I said in disgust. That's youthful, Guy cried. Oh my, don't tell me he's getting attached to me too. I groaned as Rin clung to my bruised arm. Oh sorry, she said sitting back. My heart hurt as I watched the tears fall from their eyes. And all of them were crying. I could see the arms going on Kakashi, swiping and trying to get a hold of his waterworks. These were not characters. They see me. A drop fell on my hand. These kids are here to see me. They care. More drops fell and I looked at them confused. A body moved over the others and settled at my side. Small arms circles me and silently my best friend held me as tears fell. The other 3 looked at me shocked, but soon enough Obito and Rin moved closer. Rin hugging my waist and Obito grabbing my left hand. Guy didn't stop crying and clung onto Kakashi's other side. The silver-haired boy hid his face in my shoulder, in the process hiding his own tears. These kids have become precious to me, without me knowing. In my old life, if someone would have told me that I could have died, I'd have lifted my middle finger and told them to fuck off. I felt cared about. I felt as if they really cared. That they would stay with me. Never leave me or abandon me or betray me, so as their friend I had to protect them. I have to trust them, never abandon them, be loyal. And so we sat there and cried for who knows how long. I'd give my life for these kids. This is so youthful. Guy sniffled. Yes, even that idiot. I went to school that Monday and Yumino-sensei didn't take one look at me. The other kids in the room were whispering and staring, but I ignored it. Reika. Obito turned around towards me and plopped his math sheets on my desk. I don't understand. That's 'cause you're an idiot, Kakashi muttered. Shut up, Baka. I do not comprehend either, Guy said from between Rin and the Uchiha. Rin giggled. Ask Rin? I muttered, burying my face back in my arms. But your explanations are straightforward and clear, Guy said, pumping himself up. I looked up at the sheet in my face. We were 4 months into our first year and starting to mix all the mathematical equations we learned together thus far. What do you not understand? I sighed. Where you start. I looked surprised at Rin. She grinned sheepishly. How do you not understand this? I asked her. You're more direct with your answers. I grabbed Obito's sheet and the one pencil I bring to class. On top of the sheets I introduced the kids to the Japanese equivalent to bedmas. Even Kakashi paid attention. This the order that you solve an equation. You always do what is in brackets first. Then exponents, but don't worry about those yet. I crossed out the character which corresponded to the. Then you do division and multiplication followed by addition and subtraction. The 4 kids around me blinked a few times before it set in. That makes sense, Rin said before working on her first equation. So for this question where I have 3x, 5 to 4, I'm supposed to minus 4 from 5 then times it by 3? Obito asked, scratching his head. Yes. So the answer to the question is 3? Guy asked, doing the math on the side of the page. Yes. I put my head on the table, having already completed my sheet. Kakashi finished next to me and reached over me. He grabbed my paper and I let him look over it. We have the same questions and answers, he said. I hummed in agreement, but really couldn't give two shits. The others don't have the same worksheet as us, he remarked. Really? I asked, my attention perked. Oi, stupid, hand over your paper for 2 seconds. You're stupid, Obito growled. You have your own, you can borrow mine, Rin said right after. I looked at her face and noticed a very faint red tint to her cheeks. So her crush is starting already. Thanks, Rin, he said, taking it. The blush darkened. Maybe I should do something to try to hook Rin and Obito up. I shrugged and looked at the 3 papers side by side. Kakashi and mine were identical, but Rin's was quite a bit easier. I was actually surprised that I had not noticed it. The work paper I was given had much larger numbers, and instead of using only 3 to 4 numbers, mine was around 6 to 8 number, and they even sneaked in some negatives. We had not covered those yet. I hadn't been paying attention to the questions. Instead, I just solved them. I looked over at Sensei, and he caught my eye as if he could feel my gaze. He pointed to Kakashi and I, and gestured for us to come to him. I sighed, before nudging my best friend. He looked up from comparing them, and I nodded to Sensei. Thanks, Rin, I said before we both got up and made our way through the seats. All the other students were busy talking about the worksheet or something else I didn't care about. I'm guessing you are finished? He asked. We handed in our sheets, and he looked them over. I watched his eyes as he went from one answer to another. A sigh fell from his lips, and he opened a drawer to his right. He placed the test in the folder and took out 2 envelopes. You are to give this to whoever is at home, he said. Do not open them yourself. Yes, Sensei, Kakashi said. I nodded my head and followed him back to our seats. What did Sensei wish to speak to you about? Guy asked us. Our assignments, I said, holding up the envelope to the light. Reika, Yumino-sensei said not to open it. I snorted. I'm not, I answered, tilting it. Before I could make out any words, a piece of chalk slammed into my cheek, right on a healing bruise. I dropped the letter, and it floated into Rin's head. Ow. I winced at the pain and held my cheek like it was going to fall off. Told you. I could see the grin through Kakashi's mask. Shush you, I growled. You dropped this, Rin said, smiling at our interaction. I grabbed the letter and put it in my bag. Reika! Obito turned around, oblivious to what happened. Can you look over my work? I sighed before grabbing his sheet. Kakashi v.s. Reika. I looked over at my best friend, and the girls in our class squealed. Seems like he was getting his own fan club already. His eyes caught mine and it narrowed in challenge. This was the first time we were pinned against each other in the context of the class. We walked up to the circle and took our places. Same rules apply. I placed my palms facing him and he raised his fists. Go. Kakashi made the first move. A kick was aimed to my torso. I pushed it out of the way so his back was towards me. My kick hit the back of his knee and his knees buckled. Rolling to the side, he came back at me, sending a flurry of punches that were actually not that fast. I dodged each before grabbing a hold of his left arm. He spun around, making me let go of his arm unless I wanted an elbow in the face. The spar was quite even, both of us attacking and defending. It also didn't help that we knew the other's techniques quite well. Training together at least 3 times a week ensured that. Enough, Yumino-sensei called. We stopped the second he spoke. My palm a second from his nose and his punch next to my cheek. We pulled back, a smile on our lips, and preformed the seal of reconciliation. Tai. A puzzled look crossed my best friend's face. And I shrugged. We walked back over to our little posse and were immediately jumped. Wow. You two were amazing, Guy said, exited. So fluid and youthful, I sighed. Don't get me wrong, he wasn't a bad kid, just very fucking annoying. And of course he got along great in the group. Great job, you two, Rin said with a big smile. Obito bumped my shoulder. I raised my eyebrow in question. Will you teach me how to beat his butt? He whispered. In your dreams, Kakashi said from beside me. Idiot, Obito growled. Just wait. One day I'll be Hokage. And then you'll have to see me as an equal. His grin was wide and white teeth sparkling. He looked cute. If my body was that of an adult's, he would have already been subjugated to the pinching of the cheeks. Do it, I found myself saying. Kakashi and Obito looked at me in surprise. I'd love to see the surprised face Kakashi will have when you beat him, I teased. Traitor, my best friend muttered. I grinned and looked up towards the sky. If all goes well, Obito will get that seat. And this time it will not be in a dream, but in reality. Sakumo looked at me in shock as I strolled out behind Kakashi. Is this a dream, or do you not have detention today? He asked. I glared as he started to laugh. I'm kidding, kid. He patted my head and we headed out. Since the beginning of the academy, Sakumo and my parents often switched pick-up days. Here, Yumino-sensei said to give it to you. Kakashi and I waited nervously as Sakumo opened the envelope. His face became serious. Right then I looked back towards the school. I activated my Byakugan and scanned the windows of our classroom. There I found Yumino-sensei in the window, frowning with his arms crossed and leaning against the window sill watching us. I gave him a nod and he walked away. Ikuku wants to meet with me on the topic of having you speed ahead tomorrow, Sakumo, and scratched his head. I deactivated my Kekai Genkei. Finally, Kakashi muttered. I was bored. I chuckled, holding onto my half-empty bag. Do you have one too, Reika? He asked me. I nodded. It's in my bag. He folded up the letter and put it in the inside pocket of his Jonin vest. All right, let's bring you home, he said, walking off in the direction of my house. The familiar but uncomfortable weight fell on my shoulders once we walked into the compound. Why are they staring at you? Kakashi whispered, nodding to one of the houses. I shrugged, ignoring the stares from behind curtain. Who knows, they are probably just a bunch of idiots. I muttered, maybe. Tsukumo said from behind me. His eyes softened. Shrugging Kakashi and I ran up to my doorway and I let myself in. Tadaima! I yelled. Kakashi and Tsukumo-san are here too. I ran towards the kitchen, my shoes still on, and rushed to the backyard, Kakashi on my heels. Someone is excited. My mother laughed. Kakashi and I placed our bags on the patio and he rushed out to stretch. I opened my bag and got out one of few articles I carried with me. Well, they do have all the reason to be. Tsukumo laughed from beside her. What happened now? My father called from the other side of the house. I grabbed the envelope and handed it to my mother, a grin on my face. I watched her face change from curiosity to surprise as she read. Satomi? My father asked, coming up behind her. These two are quite the kids, Tsukumo said. My mother passed the note to my father, and he read it over. I pushed off the porch and decided to join Kakashi. We fell into our usual pattern. Stretch, spar, stretch, and then the topic of our choice. We should work on our projections, I suggested. Kakashi nodded and we ran to our bags. We got out our semi-sharpened kunai, probably only as sharp as butter knives, and stood in range of our largest tree. Best out of 5, loser shares their lunch tomorrow, Kakashi proposed. I grinned. I'm in. Of course I was. Food was involved. My father had previously carved in a bullseye to the tree to help with practice, and we used that as reference. Kakashi went first. The first hit the ring closest to the bull, the second the outer ring, the third went wide, hitting the last ring while the other two hit bull. 17 points. I called. Not bad. His eyebrow twitched. He knows how good I was in projectiles. My first shot hit the ring closest to the bull. My second hit bull, as did my third. Another hit the closer ring, while the fourth hit a bit too wide, hitting the middle ring. And with a nice clean shot, I hit bull once again. 25, he said. I heard the pout in his voice. I can't wait for your dad's cooking. I grinned. What's your trick? He growled. I shrugged. I just throw. He glared and I grinned back at him. Within a second he tackled me to the ground and we were wrestling. Over the past year, I got used to my movements again and my previous style had started to bleed out. I honestly tried to stop it, but sometimes I couldn't help myself. I slid behind the boy, hooking my legs between his, and playfully catching him in a blood choke. He struggled to get out, before smirking. The color drained from my face as I quickly tried to change positions. I was a smidget too late as his elbow dug into my inner thigh. Have you ever had that happen to you? If not, let me tell you, it takes years of training not to immediately flinch away from the other person, in the process loosening your grip. It hurts. Ow. I hissed. He got out the corners of his mask pinched as if he was grinning. And he probably was. I regret showing him that move. Alright, you two, my mother called. Come and eat. Yes, Oka-san, I called. I helped Kakashi get up and we ran into the house, stopping only to remove our shoes. My father helped my mother dish out the food and all 5 of us sat together. Itakimasu, we called before eating. The conversation was light and I took pleasure in the happy moment. Kakashi, Reika, my mother started. We stopped trying to steal food from each other's plate and looked up. How do you two feel about moving ahead in the academy? It's about time, Kakashi said. We have been ready for months. Reika? Tsukumo asked. I finished my mouthful of food before answering. It's better us who are prepared than anyone else in our class who are not, I answer. What do you mean? My father asked. I talked Yumino-sensei into admitting that another war is coming, I said. The adults stiffened. We are the kids in the class that are the most prepared. So in a sense, moving up into an advanced class will prepare us more for the war to come than staying in the class we are in now and being thrusted into it. Eyes were on me, even Kakashi's, as I took another bite of my food. This information was not supposed to be given out that easy, Reika, Tsukumo asked. I know, that's why I made Yumino-sensei confirm my suspicions. How about you leave that to us adults and do what you want to do? My father asked. I smiled and pointed to my best friend. I want to stick with him, I answered. We are going to make the best team. Kakashi grinned. But little did we know, it wasn't going to be that easy. Good morning, Yumino-sensei, Kakashi and I called, walking into the room. Rin was already sitting our section of the class along with Guy. Not so fast, you two, our teacher said. We turned around. What's the matter, Yumino-sensei? Kakashi asked. We walked back to his desk. I gave Kakashi a look and he shrugged. Sensei reached into his desk and took out 2 pieces of paper. He gave one to each of us and nodded to the door. Your new classroom is down the hall. My heart dropped, but I kept my face neutral. This was it. We bowed and thanked him. I looked over my shoulder towards Rin, who was watching us confused. I waved before disappearing behind the wall. It took us not even a week to catch up to the year we were put into. 2 weeks later we were placed in a grade above. 2 months later the teacher summoned us again and gave us a new schedule. 3 months after that lead us to graduation. Here let me explain it again. I took Obito's pencil and made correction in his grammar. You're mixing up your kanji. You have to. Reika! What are you doing? Rin asked coming into her classroom. I looked up from working with Obito and raised an eyebrow. Helping Obito why? I asked. Shouldn't you be studying? She said, her arms flailing. Your written exam is in like 15 minutes. She cried. I blinked a few times before looking back over at Obito's work. Looks better but you need to work on your penmanship. I noted. Yes. I'm on my way to becoming Hokage. He cried. Reika! Rin exclaimed. Don't worry, Rin. I told her. It will be a piece of cake. And it was true. The academy was common sense. The only things I had really needed to study was the propagandized history and my jutsus. But I soon memorized what we needed to know and mastered the Academy 3. This was the same for Kakashi as well. Henge came the easiest to me. The ability to use chakra to surround myself with chakra and applying a change to my shape was second nature, as my chakra control had only improved. Substitution and clone were a bit harder, but it came to me fairly easy as well. Not as fast as Kakashi had it down, but still quite fast. Out of the 3, Henge was the only jutsu that I learned first. Are my eyes deserving me? I looked to the door to see Guy, his eyes wide. Is Obito-kun really here early for once? Shut up, Guy, said Boy muttered. I'm not that bad. I caught Rin's eye to see her trying to hold back her laughter. Stop it. I bit my lip. A snort left her lips and my shoulders started to shake. Guy broke first and started to laugh. Suddenly we couldn't help it anymore. Both of us burst out laughing. Obito. I gasped. Rin crumpled to the floor and held her stomach. She was laughing so hard. I don't think I've seen you early somewhere once. Me neither. Rin commented. Seriously, guys. He whined. I was early today, I snorted in amusement, as if I had to drag you from your house. I told him. Guy and Rin laughed some more before the door opened again. The exam is starting soon, Kakashi called. I grinned and got up. Good luck, you two, Rin called. I waved and followed my best friend out of the room. We made our way to the examination room. I bet you my lunch tomorrow that I'll get a better grade than you, Kakashi said. I grinned. You are on. Let the best student win. We shook hands and he walked in first. With a deep breath I followed. The invigilator gave me a seat, once again next to the window, and I took out my 3 pencils. 2 in case one breaks. Once all the students were seated we were told to begin. I lifted the paper and grinned. Which 2 clans came together to form Konoha? Easy. How long is a Senban? 6 inches. Draw the elemental chakra diagram and explain the position of each elements. I rolled my eyes and did what was asked. Who are the Hokage? Name them and what titles have been given to them. These questions were easy. Kakashi's food is mine. I stood in front of my mirror and looked at the headband in my hands. There wasn't anything special about it. It was a standard headband. The metal was shiny and the leaf freshly carved into it. It was bolted into the strong black fabric. Running my hands on the material, it was somewhat rough. It felt like I had been looking at the object for an hour. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if I had. Although it was a simple piece of metal with fabric attached to it, it felt heavy. Heavy in my hand, and heavy on my soul. This headband symbolized so much. It means the start of my true fight. It means that I will have to step back into the dark that I had lived through in my past life. It means that all the bad that happened in the storyline that I knew would begin to happen again if I didn't do anything. These people that had become so precious to me would be hurt, and would die, or fall so far into the darkness. But at least I knew what I was getting myself into. I tested the weight again. By placing this headband on myself, it will be my dedication to protecting them. And this meant all of them, and many others I didn't know. I slipped the fabric into my belt loops, refusing to put it on my forehead. If I did, the main family would assume that I would submit to them by being ashamed and trying to hide the seal on my forehead. No. I will wear it with pride. They are scared of me, and my possibility. I tied the insignia around my waist tightly. Are you ready, Reika-chan? My mother called. I double-checked all my weapons and supplies before opening the door. Yes, Oka-san. She looked me over and smiled. My little girl is growing up so fast, she said. I rolled my eyes. Do not roll your eyes at me, young lady, she teased as we reached the door. I smiled as we made our way to Kakashi's and Tsukumo's house. We reached the door and knocked twice. Without another second I opened the door, letting ourselves in. I barely had time to get inside before my hands were all slobbered on. Bull! I growled. He whined and headbutted my small body. He sat next to me and whined again, looking up at me. I caught his eyes and tried to ignore him. Coming, Reika! Kakashi yelled from upstairs. I frowned in disgust as my hand became slobbery. Watch it. If we are late, people might start comparing us to Obito, I called. My mother laughed into her sleeve. I jumped as something furry touched my hand, and looking down was a mistake. Those big doe brown eyes looked up at me pleading. I think this is what people refer to puppy eyes. I grimaced, but before I could help it my hand twitched and began to move. Bull physically relaxed and I yelped as he leaned against me, almost pushing me over, and trying to get me to scratch his ear harder. You were early today, Kakashi said, coming down the hall to meet me. And we are not going to be late, so I am not anything like Obito. Like me, he had foregone his backpack but opted to being fully armed. Just like they taught us in the academy. Never leave home without all your gear. He was also in the same outfit. Black turtleneck with blue shorts with the shuriken scarf around his neck. His headband was on his small forehead, and it looked almost too big for it. I shrugged. He would probably grow into it later. Similarly, mine too seemed way too big. All of a sudden one of Tsukumo's dogs walked into the hallway. Hey! That's not fair. Bull is getting all the scratchies. The dog yelled. I immediately pulled back my arm and fled the house for my life. Bye, Dad! Kakashi yelled. Have a nice day, both of you! He called from inside. From there we made our way to the academy, my mother walking us for the last time. Do you think we will be on the same team? Kakashi asked. I could hear the excitement in his voice. I do not know. I told him. I walked beside him, listening to his chatter. We would make the best team ever, he said. Kakashi-kun, Reika-chan. We turned to look at my mother, both of us walking backwards. There is a very good chance that you two will not be placed on the same team, please remember that, she said. Why do you think that? I asked, genuinely curious. After all, Kakashi and I had the highest grades in the graduating class. Speaking of that, Kakashi owes me food. Usually they do put the female and male students with the highest grades together, but due to your age, Hokage-sama probably split you up with older students to even up the teams. That sucks, he said. His voice was very dull, and quite devoid of emotion. Don't pout, Kakashi. I chuckled. I am not. He bit, and my mother was right. That is exactly what the Hokage had thought. He ended up dividing us. Team 2, Reika Hyuga, Momo Haruai, and Damien Kawasu. I looked around at the two other children that I had been placed with. They glared at each other before their eyes turned to me. Damien sneered, while Momo looked on. They were both average-looking, one civilian and the other of some shinobi family. And honestly, from what I saw of them during the exams, Momo was good at illusions and Damien was a ninjutsu fanatic. And by fanatic, I mean he is somewhat good in it while sucking in the other categories. I sighed. This obviously wasn't going to work out. Team 11, Kakashi Hatake. I didn't listen to the other names, already realizing that Kakashi was not going to get along with them. And you know I was right. What? Bread dropped from Tsukumo's hands and landed back into his plate. You both failed your team placement exams? My father asked. My mother sighed next to me. The sigh took me by surprise because it wasn't one of disappointment. Tsukumo ran his hand across his face. They were useless and boring, so I beat them, Kakashi said in response. No, that sigh was a why am I surprised type. You should have at least given them a chance before you pulled something like this, Tsukumo said. Kakashi shrugged. And what is your excuse, Reika? My father asked. Sensei said to fight him, but the two of them ended up turning onto themselves. So I realized that I was not going to pass the second exam, so I sat down on a rock and watched them fight. It was like watching toddlers whack each other. And you never thought to have tried to stop them? To tell them to stay on track? He asked. If they could not figure it out by themselves, then it is too early for them to graduate, I answered before scooping some rice into my mouth. The adults sighed as one and I looked over at Kakashi. He shrugged and continued to eat. So you two realize that you will be placed in the Genin Corps, right? My mother said. We nodded. This also means that you will only be placed on a team if you are needed and your skills match those of the team. They would be crazy not to make use of our abilities, Kakashi answered. We have too much talent to be left behind. The adults looked at us, but like usual, no reprimandings were given. We made sense, so they didn't argue. Reika! Kakashi ran into my house, his eyes shining and his mask pinching around his mouth. Yes? I took a bite of my apple and chewed the fruit. My dad is getting me another ninkin, he said. I don't think I had ever seen this kid as excited as this. He was practically jumping. That is great. I'm guessing it is a present for graduating? I asked him. He nodded. Want to come help pick him out? My apple fell from my hand and hit the table. A place with many dogs, me? Go there? Are you fucking crazy? His face fell. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about you not liking dogs. Shit, I'm disappointing him now. I looked up to see Tsukumo leaning on the door frame, watching me. Never mind, Kakashi muttered. Damn it, I'll go. His face lit up again. Really? Damn it, I'm so going to regret this. Yeah. I sighed. This is my next step to getting over the fear anyway. I picked up my apple again and wiped the apple juice and crumbs from the table. Ready to go? I said, hopping off the chair. His mask pinched again. Yes. I walked outside to see my mother tending to her small garden she had created off to the side of the yard. Oka-san, I'm going out with Tsukumo-san and Kakashi, I called. Okay, be safe, she said. As I walked back to the door, I double-checked that I had everything. It would be an embarrassment if I forgot one of my weapons or equipment. Tsukumo stayed quiet the whole journey all the way to the Inuzuka compound. Hello, Tsum, he called as we walked into the front yard. She was outside, chatting with her ninkin. And this one also looked like a wolf. I swallowed my nerves. Sakumo. She grinned. I eyed the wolf and moved to the other side of Kakashi. The pup smells terrified. The wolf chuckled. Shush, Kuramaru. Some grinned back. Let the kid be. I frowned and resisted the urge to lift my middle finger up at the mutt. So what can I do for you today? She asked. She was a lot younger than in the anime, obviously, and Kuramaru still had his ear and eye. He'll probably lose it in the Third War. Kakashi just graduated from the academy, so I would like to get him another partner for him to bond with. He said, his hand landed on Kakashi's head. She looked him up and down and raised an eyebrow. You think you're up to it, kid? And of course, Kakashi rose to the bait. Is that even a question? He said, clearly dumbfounded. I'm already raising a ninkin. Some grinned and laughed at his annoyance. All right, I believe you, she said, bending down to his level. But you will have to promise me that you will love this ninkin just as much as you love the other. Of course, he said smugly. She grinned before leading the way around the house. Kuramaru hung back until all of us followed Sim. I watched him follow us form the corner of my eye. I followed behind, keeping my eyes on the back of Kakashi's head, trying not to listen to the part of me telling me to run. So I'm guessing you remember the process? She asked my best friend. Yes, he responded. Good. She turned forward and opened the gate to a wide open yard. Dog houses were scattered around the field, with dogs of all sizes in and around them. A crowd of them were playing, wrestling and running, chasing and playfully attacking each other. I must say, it was kind of cute. Pups. I tensed, almost forgetting about the wolf right behind me. I looked over and saw him grin playfully. I glared before stepping up to be beside Kakashi and Sakumo. So many! Kakashi squealed. I looked at him surprised, and all of a sudden all the puppies turned their heads. A bark sounded and they all came running. Moving out of the way, I watched Kakashi get tackled to the ground and slobbered on. I looked on in disgust. My hands started to shake and I looked up, not realizing I had taken shelter behind Sim. She looked over her shoulder at me and was wiping tears from her eyes. You don't have to worry about them, Reika-chan, Sakumo said, also laughing. The worst thing they can do is pee on you. Kakashi squealed as we watched the pups lick any skin they could reach. Embarrassed, I came out from behind Sim, trying to act like I wasn't hiding, but everyone knew. Sim whistled and all the pups ran off back to playing with each other. I heard giggling and watched as Kakashi sat up, his mask pinching in a smile and wiping the puppy's spit off his face. You okay there, Kakashi? Sakumo asked with a smile. Yeah, he got up and brushed himself off. But their breath stinks. All right, Sim said, sizing up the chibi. Is there one you want to meet? I stood next to Sakumo and watched Kakashi and Sim talk. They roamed around and she introduced him to different puppies. He would crouch down and meet them before moving on to another. You didn't have to come, Reika-chan, Sakumo told me. Kakashi would have gotten over it. I shrugged. I wanted to. Which was somewhat true. Partially because I was curious of the process of adopting a ninkin, and somewhat because I wanted to see how far I have gone in the year and a bit I have been working on my fear. Sakumo watched me from the corner of my eye and I ignored his stare. So you are scared of mutts? I glared at the wolf as he huffed and sat beside me. So what if I am? I bit back. He laughed. Then you have serious balls. Kuramaru, please, she is still a child, Sakumo warned. Why do you say that? I asked him, ignoring Sakumo's attempt to censor the wolf. Because humans by nature are scaredy cats, he huffed. Especially pups like you. A lone puppy galloped towards me and I resisted the urge to step back. The puppy was a little brown pug with large floppy dark brown ears. It was cute, I think. The pup sat in front of me and whimpered. Kuramaru growled, trying to scare it off, and the pup ran away. I rolled my eyes. Grumpy? I asked the wolf. He grinned, I think. A whimper sounded once again at my feet and I looked down. The pup was back. Stubborn little one. The wolf growled. Get out of here, he snarled. The pup whimpered again before running behind Sakumo. I watched as it stubbornly sneaked past the older Hataki and sat next to me again, just out of sight of the wolf. I laughed at the little one's attempts. It must have only been a month and a half old at this point. Still quite young. The black eyes stared at me, clearly trying to communicate. I sighed, knowing what it wanted. Reika? I ignored Sakumo's call and bent down to the little puppy. I held out my hand and it took a sniff. Almost immediately it licked my hand and put its face under it. I grinned and started to scratch the brown ear. The puppy seemed to like it as it howled. I would like this one. I looked to see the puppy that Kakashi chose and was surprised to see him pointing to the puppy currently rolling in mud beside me as I scratched his, now that I could see, belly. You haven't even met Pakin yet, Sim said, surprised. I know, he said, looking down at my hand. But he is the only one that came near Reika. The puppy barked and got up. He ran around me and jumped onto my knee like a goat. I flinched as it licked my face but didn't shoo him off. Sim grinned and looked over at my best friend. I like the way you think, kid, she said. Pakin. The pup looked back, high-fived me in the face with his paw and jumped off to go see Sim. This is Kakashi. Kakashi, this is Pakin. I watched Kakashi go towards the ground and leave his hand open for Pakin to sniff. The dog did so and immediately put his paw on the hand, and that's how the Hataki household grew by one. Hataki, Kakashi, and Hyuga, Reika. We stood up from the hallway and walked into the mission's office. Chunin didn't look up as we stood in front of his desk. He sat at the desk with scrolls all around them and piles writing something down. I'm giving you 2 ruse duty for the next month. He gave us papers to sign. You will be paid according to a D-rank mission for that amount of time. Birds? Well, it's better than weed pulling. We didn't complain and signed the papers. This sucks, Kakashi groaned as we made our way to the village roost. It was located near the edge of the village, but close enough so that if there was an emergency, they could get to the Hokage Tower fast. That's what happens when we are put in the Genin Corps. I think I'll pass the test next time just so that I don't have to do this. He growled, clearly grumpy. I shrugged. How bad could it be?